Yes,
And
it was a mixed guy. Yeah, I saw it
Yeah.
on Twitter. Yeah, he was black.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was mixed, but I mean, he was black.
Yeah, it
I
sounds
He
like
was
he's black.
Obama black. You know what I mean? Like,
here's Obama Black.
you know what I'm saying?
That's crazy.
Their places in the home, raising the children.
You know, somebody
and we
lost
could look to
when
countries
they're
in the
having to
Middle
do
East where
hardcore
in many of
damage
these
control
countries,
with their
it's totally
audience
socially acceptable
afterwards,
to for a 50-year-old
and
man
like
to
make an
marry a
argument
little-
that
a
I
child,
can't hear.
right?
All right, so we are going to start introducing these people. I will start with our friend Jay Chow. We haven't seen forever for for a lot of months. But I thought about our friend
Guys,
Jay
how
Chow
fucking
reached out-
toasted are you right now?
Toasted by you think I do drugs? I don't.
Dude.
I don't do drugs.
You sure about that?
Are you kidding?
You seem high as fuck right now.
My eyes
His
are
eyes
like
are fine.
are just like this. This is my face.
He's just high on life.
All right.
Yeah.
True. That's all you need.
I do no drugs. Period. Like I don't even drink. I've never smoked marijuana.
All right. Well, you
I've
need to
never
get
done
some.
anything.
You need to get some sleep. There, straight edge.
Wait, never.
You
even
need to
smoked
come to a
marijuana,
barn party in
Prime?
Nebraska.
Wait, you said you don't even drink, Prime?
I last time I had alcohol. Oh, I may have had alcohol on the lips of a woman, I guess. But like, I've last time I actually drank alcohol, I was like 14.
My lord.
Alrighty. Well, hey, you do your straight edge, you man.
No, yeah, but you're a leftist. Like you, what are you doing?
What?
You need to
I
live in
don't know
life.
what that has to do with
The
anything.
heck?
Oh, that has everything to do.
Cat
with it.
Williams bit. If you ain't got no job and you ain't smoking weed, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Like, yeah, that's
Oh.
sorry, it's a classic
Yeah,
joke.
I think the thing is that we
Jesus,
assume most
blackface.
leftists are like either drug addicts or alcoholics because that's the only way they could believe the crazy shit they say.
100%. They
Facts.
gotta be.
If you're
degenerates
not
in some
doing that,
sort of
like,
way.
what's the excuse? Like, what's going on?
Right?
Yeah,
Hating
like-
capitalism, hating jobs, hating money. Of course, they have to be lazy and stupid and be on drugs.
It
because
was a
they can't
quote
be
by the late
rational or
great
anything
Rush
else.
Limbaugh, but marijuana just makes chemically induced Democrats.
Yeah, but okay. So oh, this has been wonderful. Let's continue on with the introduction. Jay Chow, right?
What's up?
Thanks for being here, buddy.
Happy to be here.
I'm not crazy, right?
But
Like
I
he
might
looks
wanna
blitzed
forget
as
being on this
fuck
panel
right now.
because
He's like,
the chief reason why leftists and liberals take drugs is because we hear the shit that from conservatives and we just want to forget about it. So we drink and do as many drugs as we can in order to get back into the bliss of ignorance of reality where there is no such thing as conservatives. Well, I don't hate conservatives. I have many conservative friends. I am Jay Chow. I make YouTube videos on political science, and it was in those classes that I met a lot of conservatives and had a good time with them. A lot of good discussions, a lot of good debates and whatnot. And in a little way, I'm trying to replicate that on my own on YouTube and also Twitch stream on Jay Chow Live. That's twitch.tv/Jay Chow Live. That's where I am right now. And happy to be here, as always.
Out to Jay
Thanks for
Chow.
inviting me.
Absolutely. Now let's go to my friend KOE Nation. I've been hitting this man up many times, but like he just we haven't been able to get him because he's busy. He's just like a farmer. He's like, creating life, right? All right. So why is he's pro-choice, right? So anyway, thank you, thank you, KOE, for coming through, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Prime. Thank you very much. And folks, you need to be able to subscribe. You need to be subscribed right here. Prime Cayes on YouTube, Prime Cayes on Twitch, folks. But I have a question for all of you. Are you ready? Folks, they mean, are you ready? Well, let's get ready to reverend, folks. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, the lord of the Scottish Highlands, and one damn handsome man if I do say so myself, Phil KOE. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, KOE Nation on Twitch, KOE Nation on TikTok. That's K as in king, O as in oh my god. You can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. E as in extremely happy to know. You can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch, folks. It's all very on brand. I hope you come join the party, and you come. We have a complete open borders policy at the KOE Nation. So long as you are cool and chill about shit, you are in, folks. God bless every last one of you, and I am looking forward to getting into quite some interesting topics of the day right here at the Prime Cayes panel. But folks, these lips of mine,
so bad.
they can speak no evil. And with that, I yield back to you beautiful people.
He's so perfect. I love him so much. And I did the rest of my panel a disservice because now they have to follow him. So thank you for the kind words and for being here, friend. Next, let's go to Scott. Scott, who is a frequent flyer here, and we're very glad for it. Scott, thanks for stopping by once again.
Hey, how's everybody doing? So, I'm Scott. You know me. You probably hate me. That's okay, because I'm right and you're wrong. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. We do a duo stream along with my co-hosts. We do these debates from time to time. We do a lot of interviews. We recently interviewed Dr. Walter Block on evictionism, and that's now up on YouTube. So, Fabian Liberty on Twitch, Fabian Liberty on YouTube, Liberty_Fabian on Twitter. But if you just search Fabian Liberty, you'll find us anywhere you look. We're also on Rumble, but nobody cares about Rumble. That being said, yeah, I'm excited to be here. Love it. I'm really excited to talk about the first topic. This is something I never in a million years thought would have showed up anywhere, and I fucking love these guys. Okay, so excited to talk about this shit.
Okay, glad I found something that you might enjoy, really. Okay, let's go to Fanatic. Fanatic, right? A VIP in this community, right? Fanatic, who does a lot, and if in case you don't know Fanatic, you'll understand him soon, right? Like why he's so loved and controversial in this community. Thank you, Fanatic, for being around.
Yeah, emphasis on that controversial. Thank you.
Would literally make everything about race.
That's topics. I expect to be yelling at niggas, specifically Fabian, because I know he's going to interrupt me a bunch of times and not let me finish sentences. You can find me at twitch.tv/Mr.
Okay, awesome. And then, of course, our Dark Lord and Savior, Doobie, is back with us, right? Consistently, like the first person I send an invite to is my man Doobie, right? Doobie, my great partner in all this, so I'm always happy that he spends time with us. Doobie, how are you today?
I'm doing very well.
Anything else?
I'm Doobie.
All right.
Yo, I love it. He doesn't need to fucking pimp
we will
anything.
Continue on then. Excited to have you all here. All right. So this is I hope this is a really interesting topic, and I hope it's something different than something you guys usually discussed. So the Faroe Islands has a traditional hunt in which fishermen get together to capture and kill dolphins. And the Faroe Islands are like between like Scotland and another island. It's near Scotland.
Officially part of Denmark.
Thank you. In which fishermen get together to capture and kill dolphins. The dolphins aren't killed for commercial enterprise, rather simply to help feed and supply the island residents. However, last year, the dolphin hunt broke a record by killing 1,400 plus dolphins in a single event, where they usually kill like 1,000 marine animals like total throughout like a year, right? The slaughter literally made the sea blood red. This ignited a conflict over whether the tradition should continue. Under pressure from foreign environmentalists, the government is proposing a cap of 500 dolphins per year to be killed in these slaughters. Do you think such a cap is warranted? Should governments buckle to pressure from environmentalists just because they perceive an action as animal cruelty? Should traditions be subject to scrutiny by activists who don't even live in the territory? Okay, yeah, I'll put a link in chat, guys, in case you don't know, and like content warning, like, trigger warning, if you aren't a big fan of gore or anything like that, like animals being hurt. But there's a video in that link, and it shows what happened last year. It's raw. Like I said, the sea is literally blood red with how many dolphins they killed. So yeah, I'm really curious about this. And like, what foreigners gonna say? Start with J Chow.
So I think if there weren't any environmental impacts to a bunch of dolphins just being killed all at once, and we also have to consider that this isn't just an event that happens once, but probably in many places and many times over the year, and over well, it's a tradition, so it's been happening for maybe even centuries, and that it's not just dolphins, but it's other animals as well. If it didn't just like affect the environment or didn't affect the just entire ecosystems, maybe the food chain and whatnot, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. And I have no idea if this event actually does have an effect on it, but if it does, then that calls into question, well, what kind of an intervention we want to do in order to protect the environment and in order to have it so that other organisms, including ourselves, aren't negatively affected. We rely on other species within our ecosystem for food as well as for other things, whether it be beneficially, maybe it's like the algae, for example. Right, so I think like when it comes to the activists coming up and being concerned about it, the government coming up and being concerned about it, and you kind of have that like this network, but this pressure in order to get something done, then that's something I'm generally in support of. And I don't believe that for the sake of tradition that we ought to keep it, because if a tradition is bad, and maybe back then we just didn't know better, but now we do, then it's time to act, it's time to change.
AOE Nation.
Well, thank you, sir. To me, I think this is one of those instances where I've always believed native and indigenous hunting rights absolutely need to be respected. I think that this is a 1,000-year tradition on this particular island amongst these folks, and I think they're not really making a major environmental impact in any way. It just seems bad because it's dolphins and pirate whales. Now, there's something you all need to keep in mind here, folks. There was an old poet, I can't remember his name, but he wrote this: when a man crushes a cockroach, they're considered a villain. When a man crushes a cockroach, he's considered a hero, rather. There we go. When he crushes a butterfly, they're considered a villain. Our morality does have an aesthetic component to it. And so that's something you need to keep in mind, is these are people that are living in an island of a population of about 50,000, which is about the population of Grand Island, Nebraska, which is not a very big city, okay? It's about 50,000 people. That's the entire population of this entire nation. And these are folks who are eating seagulls, they're eating sheep, they're eating whatever the fuck they can find, and they have every right to sustain themselves and subsist themselves on their own natural resources as they see fit. It's their, and this is the big part that a lot of folks who are environmental activists have a really hard time grasping and wrapping their minds around. It is their home. It is not your place to say what they do in their home. And let's be frank, this particular activity does not affect anybody within the sound of my voice, not even in the most abstract way. If you try to, like Kevin Bacon's 7 degrees of separation, try to find a way, it does not affect you. And so for you to come in and say, no, you do not eat the pretty dolphins because that upsets my metropolitan sensibilities, it does kind of have a let them eat cake flavor a little bit. So these are folks who are subsisting on what the ocean gives them, and this is their way of life. And for you to just say you shouldn't do that, to be frank, who are you to say? Who the fuck are you to say whether or not they should live this way? And with that, I yield to somebody that is apparently very much looking forward to this, if you're going to be the next guy. Prime, thanks for having me on. This one's going to be interesting.
Scott, please.
Yeah, so I would say pretty much everything Phil said, but I would like to add some things. The real reason that they're willing to accept 500 as a cap on what is the longest recorded hunting statistical record in the entire world, because they have been very, very, very careful in making sure that they do conservation. They bring them in, they track them scientifically. They place trackers on them so they can look at the patterns. They make sure that they're not doing anything above 0.01% of the population. So that they can maintain those levels. The real reason that they're doing that is because of methylmercury poisoning. And the fact of the matter is despite the fact that this archipelago is based primarily off of what the sea can provide, which is seagulls and fish and pilot whales, which we're calling dolphins because they're technically dolphins, but they're kind of like dumb dolphins that have a lot more blubber and meat on them. A lot of what they call steak. The grind, right, is the act, it's the hunt, it's the meat itself, and it is the pilot whale. They're willing to accept that because they now have to limit how much food they can actually eat from that so that they don't poison their bodies and they don't poison their children. And they don't have the ability to farm in this nation. The only thing they have is the ability to kill sheep and to use, goat's milk and things like that. And then they have to have like some form of modern, way of gaining money. And then, like importing stuff after that. That is the real reason that they're willing to accept these numbers. In 2017, they had killed less than 300. Right. And so this number does fluctuate. It is an exceedingly high number, but it is something that has also been challenged by the Sea Shepherds, which are environmental activist groups that come into their land and try and stop the dolphins from coming there. Sometimes they get arrested. And so what I would say is not only should they keep this tradition, not only is it their private property that they have homesteaded, specifically the fjords that are very clearly for over 1,000 years, they have maintained those fjords and they have maintained that tradition of bringing in and moving the dolphins or the pilot whales because it is their homesteaded common property of their island nation. I think they should be able to violently remove any protesters that show up there. I think if Sea Shepherds show up in boats and hop in the fjords, they should be able to fire rounds at them and kill them if they need to in order to protect their homeland and to protect their food and to protect their culture as they see fit.
Violently remove. Okay.
Well, and everything else.
Thank you
That last
so
part
much.
I'm not quite sure about, but most of it, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Please, Fanatic.
Oh wow, this is gross. I hate agreeing with this guy, but yeah, he's right. I think when you start trying to impose your will on other people, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. And I think like there always has to be a context that's given about like whether like how something is impacting people. For instance, I remember there was that case where there was all these environmental people that were like, crying about Cecil the lion being killed by some dentist woman or something. She was just hunting it, I guess, for game. And so people were like, yeah, she killed this lion named Cecil. And one of the people that was like actually from the area that Cecil had been terrorizing for God knows how long, was just like, I don't understand what you guys are. I remember when he killed my friend. I remember when we weren't allowed to walk to school anymore because Cecil was out there and he could kill us. I remember all of the impact that had on it and like how terrifying it was. So when you start talking about like, oh, protect Cecil the lion, like to me it just sounds like hogwash because like that lion had eaten people. And just like anything else, once they get a taste for blood, then they start becoming more like that becomes something that they seek more. And yeah, that was something that was happening. You can't impose your will and your way of life and your context on other people and say you're not living right. I think they have a right to their autonomy. And if like this is how they survive, this is like part of their food source and stuff, as long as they're not hurting the environment such as like, oh, they're killing enough of them that they're going to like make them go extinct and they're going to damage the rest of the world. Like if they're not doing something like that, I don't understand like how we would even entertain the conversation that they should be considering whatever the freak we're talking.
Interesting. I think you might have a fun conversation with this. Doobie, go.
So if there's no like far-reaching detrimental environmental impact on the rest of the world, I really don't care how many dolphins or whales they kill, whether it's for food or for pleasure. I don't give a fuck. They can, hang dolphins from their street posts if they want to. But that being said, I think to the wider question is like whether or not traditions should be subject to the scrutiny of activists. I think the answer is like absolutely. But I wouldn't limit it to activists. I think that nations typically have an interest in spreading their version of civilization over the planet. If we have the ability to impose our version of morality, culture, etc., on another nation and have it benefit us in the short or long term, or have them look more like something that we'd consider moral or good, then yeah, we should absolutely do this. Whether it's like through direct force if necessary, or just like pressure, right? Economic pressure, social pressure, whatever it is.
So I'm excited that Doobie was here. I was thinking of Doobie when I was writing this question because I knew he would take that stance. We've talked about something similar previously, and I think I'm always of two minds about this, and imposing our will because I take a bit of what Fanatic said, right? Then I take a bit of what Doobie said. Like Fanatic talking about how people like maybe don't understand the culture, right? Like us Westerners, saying, "Oh, this is a bad thing," right? And it shouldn't have happened. Where if you look within the context of whatever culture we're talking about, no, this actually makes a lot of sense. And like viewing it through our morality is kind of inconsequential and more detrimental rather than like stepping outside of ourselves. But then again, some shit is just terrible. It's just awful that people get up to. So figuring out that line, I think, is super interesting. I'd really like to discuss it, which is kind of where I want to focus on. So yeah, open to the panel.
So
Yeah,
I want to mention
really
something.
quickly, there are some traditions that are really, really terrible, right? Like, and this is going to be a really controversial thing to say. You guys can suck me, I don't care. That thing that they were talking about that I discovered from some crazy conservatives, and I thought that they were just lying, and then it turns out that they were actually accurate about those Jewish people that are going around sucking those baby dicks as part of like their circumcision process. That was freaking nuts.
Well,
They bite it off with their teeth. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Didn't think we were going to get here tonight.
Yep, it's going
Straight
here.
there.
Well, in that situation, like they said that
Within
like,
minutes.
yeah, people were talking about the fact that like, yo, what you should be doing, like, one, there was these cases of these babies that were getting STDs because the Jewish people that were sucking their dicks actually had
It was one priest, one rabbi.
No, but it was, no, there was a bunch. There were so many cases, in fact, that eventually the state legislature created legislation that said basically we're going to track this to find out who's sucking the baby dicks, so then we can find out like if you're giving these kids whatever. And then they eventually took it back when the Jewish people said, okay, if anyone sucks a baby dick and then gives the baby herpes or something, then
Someone's been reading fucking
that person
Farrakhan
from doing it. But then there's no oversight or anything to make sure that they're doing it. And so then there's still these babies getting their dick sucked and then getting freaking meningitis and all sorts of other STDs and nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So that's a tradition. And the reason why they're doing that is purely just rooted in tradition. There are times where you can recognize that a tradition is harmful. Like this used to be something that maybe we were doing at some point out of superstition or out of ignorance. But if we see something as harmful, any tradition needs to get the hell out. Tradition is the corpse of wisdom. It just doesn't make any sense to maintain something purely for tradition.
Well, so I wanted to
just following that line.
Let's go to Scott, Doobie, J. Chow.
So I wanted to say two things real quick. The first thing is when talking about like that line, and does that line apply here to the Faroese? That line clearly does not apply to the Faroese, even if we're taking like the consequentialist or like the Fifi's argument here, right? No matter what it is, because they have a book. It's I couldn't get a copy. I was trying to find a copy for you, Prime Cayes. They have a book called 2 Minutes. And the reason the book is called 2 Minutes is because they train their teenagers when they specifically wade out into the water, and they make sure that they go for the aorta as quick as possible. It is literally the most humane way that you can kill pilot whales. And they make this argument often, which I think is an interesting argument when they speak to journalists and stuff, because they don't do this in secret like in Japan where they like try and hide the cameras and shit. Like they're very open about this, and they'll say like, yeah, you people literally grow pigs and animals in cages their entire fucking lives, and what we do is we let them live a happy and long life, and then when it comes time that we need food for our people, we bring them in and we kill them as quickly and as humanely as is possible, and then we drag them in. The reason the water turns red with blood is because they intentionally do this in a more humane way, which is to kill them as quickly as possible and then hook them and bring them to shore, right? So, I mean, like, there isn't a more humane way to kill pilot whales. The other thing I wanted to say in regards to what Fanatic is saying is, yeah, I completely agree with you, and that's why I'm a proponent of natural law and non-aggression, is because if you have a philosophical basis in what is considered aggression and what is considered wrong to do to other people, we can actually look and use logic to ascertain what is a tradition that is harmful and what is a tradition that we may not like, but we can say fuck off to because is it an act of aggression against a person that has attained personhood? Dolphins have not attained personhood. Human beings have. And so when you are harming other human beings with your tradition and against their consent, which children cannot consent, fuck that tradition. I don't care about your goddamn culture. You're committing violence against other human beings. And that's, I think, one of the big reasons that a lot of people follow natural law philosophy.
Let's go to
Sure.
the J Chow.
Well, I just want to be like really clear about what we're talking about with the Jewish thing. It's not that they're like biting the foreskin off with their teeth. I mean, unless something changed recently. My understanding is that they actually use like a knife to cut off the foreskin, and then they suck out. They do put their lips on the penis and suck out the blood, right? And they suck on the penis to get the blood. So yeah, they're not actually like chewing off baby foreskins, but still, yeah, they're sucking on baby dick.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think it's interesting because Prime and I had a conversation a while back about something pretty similar in lots of ways, where we were wondering if you're like the outside observer, right? You're the outside culture, the more advanced civilization, though this stuff does happen in the United States, unfortunately, the baby dick sucking. If there's no like, Prime, I'm just gonna lay out what we were talking about specifically.
Okay.
There was a tribe that did this. I don't know if they still do this. I think they've like massively diminished how much this is happening over the years. But it used to be a tradition in this tribe, the Sambian tribe in New Guinea, to when a child hit, I think, the age of 7 years old, off the top of my head, they began going through like a male rite of passage. One of those rites of passage was and this was because they believed that males weren't born with semen. They needed to get semen from other men. One of the rites of passages for years, these little boys would go around giving the older boys and the men in the tribe blowjobs every day and swallowing their semen. And this would go on for years. And this was meant to like get the woman out of them, basically, and to replace it with masculinity, and to give them a supply of semen that they could use in their life. Now, when people showed up and they realized this was happening, right? They didn't like force them to stop militarily, right? They kind of like tried to outlaw it. They tried to convince them not to do it. They tried to convert them, and eventually they kind of like stopped doing it on their own. I think, Prime, if I remember correctly. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't remember the
more or
details off
less.
the top of my head, but
Yeah.
more or less they had like a massive shift in how they saw this kind of stuff. But we were wondering, like, so if you're the outside observer and you're seeing this, right? And these children and these men even don't feel like they are molesting children. They don't feel like they're harming these children. These children are being taught that this is what they're supposed to do to become men. So maybe they don't feel like victims. Is there like an aspect here where if you teach them to do it your way, which is, you don't have little boys sucking men's dicks every day, you're actually harming them, because you're like teaching them that actually, hey, you are a victim by my version of how civilization should be. You have been molested. You are a pedophile. Right? Like, is there like harm being done there? And if there is, should you do it?
Yes, there is harm being done there, clearly.
Uh,
I mean,
let's-
even if the children lack, or the adults lack the capacity for informed consent as to what's happening, harm is still being done.
No, I mean, is there harm in explaining to them what's happening? If you're an adult who has
Better
been
a cruel truth than a comforting delusion, I say.
who's been raised to believe that when you were a child and you had to suck off your uncle every day, that this is just how you become a man, and then you had your son who's going around sucking dicks in the village every day because that's what you thought would make him a man. If someone explained to you and convinced you that actually this is child abuse, right? Aren't you like victimizing those people in some way, like by explaining to them the awful shit they've been doing? Aren't you
By pulling them
Kinda
out
like
of
making
Plato's
that-
cave and revealing that the shadows aren't all of
Basically, yeah.
reality? Yeah, I mean, if you want to say that, but yeah, sorry, reality can be a cruel truth at times.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
like
say.
that's
I
how
would
you're
say.
begging a question really hard, and I'm trying not
Yeah,
to ask
yeah.
it.
I got you. Yes, Doobie, I would agree with you. I think you are like exposing the people to abuse, because if they've like completely normalized this experience and so on and so forth, then yeah, they don't view it the way that we do. So then, yeah, they're not even recognizing that. Yeah, they're being like essentially. It's a form of molestation. I don't know how else to say it, but God, I don't know. I guess it's really awkward because I think there is a whole thing about intent and stuff within that, and if all that
Right.
intent and everything is missing, it's hard to call it molestation. It's a little different. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah,
But-
but,
but
then
in that
the problem
situation,
of
would you say that it's
hiding
wrong?
that
Go ahead, Jason.
information from people, the problem with hiding that information from people is that you are going to continue this practice and continue it to be alive because people are going to continue to believe that, oh, this is the real intent when it really isn't. It was kind of just a lie in order to just keep it on forever and more and more and more. And so what ends up happening is, in the event of trying to protect people from the harsh reality, you are allowing the tradition to do even more harm into the future.
Wait, but you're doing a bunch of work there that we haven't done, right? Like in the sense that, like you're
You're
automatically
assuming the harm.
Yes, you're assuming the harm. You're assuming
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
intentionally doing this, like to be harmful and all that. And I don't think that any of us are doing that because
I
we
think-
don't know.
This is what I would say, and
I would
obviously
categorically
this
say
is,
that like an action like that is like considered harmful.
yeah. So
No,
I
no,
would
no.
I would
No,
just
but-
assume.
No, but we're talking about the intent though. Did they intend to do that as a form of harm?
I think
Were they
well,
doing
like
that?
I could separate intent from the consequence, right?
So I would.
Because
I
like
would
I could intend not to kill somebody, but if I kill somebody, like, oh, it's by accident. Well, it's like you still killed somebody. It's still like bad, right?
Yeah, there's actually a way to do this, right? And again, this is, actually from Dr. Walter Block. The way that you do this is, it is only a forestalling of the guardianship's rights of the parents, right? When you can prove that harm has been done that is either permanently psychological or permanently physical, such as any form of surgery that isn't, necessary to save a child's life, any scarring, or any psychological damage that's permanent. If you can prove permanent damage, right, then what you have done is you have engaged in child abuse. But if you can't actually prove permanent damage from this because for whatever reason the cultural context is as such that it doesn't cause psychological damage, we can look at that as disgusting, we can look at that as weird, we can look at that and say, you don't go anywhere near my fucking kids, right? But the fact of the matter is that if you can't prove that damage has been done, then there's no forestalling of the guardianship. And so if this culture is that way, to Doobie's other point, the argument that you're making is also, I find it strangely similar to the argument that you hear like amongst Christians and like about like introducing Christianity to the native population, where people are like, well, now that you've told me that God exists, like if I don't accept God, right, then I'm going to hell. Why would you tell me? Right. And so it's kind of an interesting thing here is that like if you tell them that this is abusive to the children and like you inform that it is, even if it may not technically be so, that information in of itself is damaging to the cultural practice. So the real question is the damage being done? If the damage isn't being done, then
Well, if I may,
it's not our
Hold
place.
on, really quick,
I
there's a
gotta
better
give just
solution. The better solution here is not to tell them about any damage being done, and instead just to inform them that like this ritual is unnecessary. Like
Yes.
help them, like give them the information that like
Because if they're
this-
truly not
this-
seeking harm or sexual pleasure and they're informed of the fact that this isn't helping, why would they continue this practice?
absolutely.
Well, that's kind of, if I may, is what I was going to get at is like, we're talking about, and I wanted to push back on the notion that it's not causing harm, like the harm is informing them. Because if you were to come upon like some native tribe, some very small tribe somewhere in some little corner of the world somewhere, and that tribe does not allow their women to perform any kind of reading or mathematics, and you talk to the women of that tribe and they say, well, no, it's a good thing that women are not allowed to read or perform mathematics, we would all understand that those women, they lack the capacity for informed consent at this point. They have not been given the proper information. So what Fabian's talking about, what Fanatic was touching on there at the very end is like, yeah, education, folks, it is the great gift of God to all of us.
But again,
you get the-
again,
well,
natural
the
law.
knowledge
But
goes a
again-
long way.
But again, natural law solves this problem. If the women voluntarily don't want to do this, then there's no problem. If the women are being banned just like black slaves in America are being murdered or killed for the crime of having been caught to read, then that is violence that is committed upon them. And we have a duty, if they so ask for our help, to stop that. But if they're like, hey, this is the way we do our tribe, this is the way we do our culture, it works for us, and I choose to do this because I'm at home.
For informed consent. It's the same reason that we don't consider it valid if a minor consents to an adult's sexual advances, because they lack the capacity for informed consent.
So you're saying that that grown women lack the capacity for informed
if their tribe
consent.
has been for hundreds of years not allowing them to read or do the mathematics, it could very well.
Dude, I hate to be a leftist here. I hate to be a leftist here, but like that's the most ethnocentrist shit I've ever heard. Like that's not a lack of informed consent. You're just using that word in a context where it doesn't work.
Propagandized into anything.
Okay, well then I could say all of you lack the ability to vote because you don't have informed consent, because you're all indoctrinated into being statists. Therefore, none of you have the right to vote, and we should violently stop you. Like you could use that logic with anything.
Well, you could believe that.
Right, but
but we would all recognize that as being silly. That's not
right, which is why I recognize it as being silly here.
We all recognize when somebody lacks the capacity for informed consent, even them thinking that what conditions they're in is good. We all recognize that as being wrong.
Yeah,
we
so
all
to build
recognize
off
that
of
they're being propagandized, they're being abused, they're being mentally terrorized into thinking something.
Yeah, to build off what Ko is saying is like
that's
that
bullshit.
Where, like,
that's a bullshit lie.
They're trapped by tradition and they don't know otherwise, and to even suggest them to do otherwise, sometimes you'll be faced with backlash of, no, we've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years, this is ingrained in our tradition, it has been working, look at us, we're just doing just fine. And so then like this is not just like the trap of tradition, but also the trap of ignorance. And I want to echo the sentiment that education is something that can free someone's mind and also, well, their body as well. Yep. Getting out of Plato's cave is really good. Now then, I think the question here that Fanatic just said yeah to me, but then I think he disagrees with this one. And I also kind of find it contradictory that we do impose our will onto other people. We do see that we also impose our own morality, our own moral system, set of laws, what is good and right onto other people, regardless if we believe that it shouldn't be done. We do so otherwise. It's called government. That's politics. That's why we have two parties in the United States. But at the end of the day, one is ruling over the other, and sometimes it's all three branches of government, and we kind of just have to deal with it because that's democracy. That's the way that it was set up, because there's never going to be a time in which we all agree with each other, and so we have to find a way in order to live with the disagreement, and that comes with, well, like the harsh reality of the wills of other people do get imposed onto us. Just like in the case when it comes to the Supreme Court is imposing their will onto the rest of the country, regardless if like 60-80%, whatnot, the majority of the country disagrees with that. That's how the system works, and
it's a violent and immoral system.
Wait, hold on. The Supreme Court is not imposing their will when it comes to if you're referring to the abortion thing, because the Supreme Court
that's just localization.
It's left up to the state, right? They're not imposing anything in there. Besides saying we're not going to impose, we're going to take back our imposition. If you're calling that an imposition, that's crazy to me.
Sure. So secondly, the imposition from the Supreme Court. So let me clarify. So then the imposition from the Supreme Court would be their understanding of how to interpret the Constitution.
Well, no,
what?
That's literally their job. That's not an imposition. So you're reaching there. Secondly, I would say
regardless
that
if it's their job or not, I would
Secondly, I would say that I don't know why you said that I would be disagreeing with this thing, because one, I don't have the belief system that we're going to be living in some sort of like isolated bubble where we're not going to be imposing our morality on other people.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you said that you don't.
I'm going to finish. I'll finish, and then afterwards, then you can interrupt me. Then afterwards, then you can go. So like there's a thing where, like, for example, like it's an imposition of our morality to be able to say you can't get revenge on another person, right? Like if a person murders you, like your kid or something, you can't just decide, okay, well, I'm gonna murder this person back, right? Like that's an imposition. We're deciding, hey, we think this is not okay. You can't point to some sort of so pretty much the vast majority of laws like are an imposition of whatever. So for example, we say you can't speed a certain speed limit. I think I'm perfectly fine driving 80 miles per hour, but the law says I can't. And if I do so, then I'm recklessly endangering other people and so on and so forth. It's all these whatever. We impose our will and our law all the time. What I'm saying is I don't think it's reasonable to like impose our will and our law if there's not a harm being done and without taking into context that other people have their own agency, which might lend them towards certain things that we might find are problematic, but they're not under our jurisdiction. So we have no right or no right or authority to impose on them. People agreeing to live in a society obviously automatically subscribe to the rules and whatever of that society in order for the society to function. But like going to another country that's like self-sustaining, that has nothing to do with us on a different continent, that's not part of that process.
But I mean, like, don't you see the issue with that logic in the sense that like you're okay with it, you just have an arbitrary line of reasonableness? Like, and this is the problem that I have with people that appreciate the state is like, I'm okay with imposing my will democratically or majorly, and we're going to create this idea of like, we're America. And I think, I think Nebraska over here might be very different than New York's America, right? These are different cultures, different people, different traditions. And hell, if you speak to someone from New York, you might even damn near say a different language. And so the idea that Nebraska has the power or New York has the power to impose their will on other people based off of majority rule or a system of, republicanism that is, mostly majority rule is arbitrary in and of itself. But you're saying, well, this isn't reasonable because it doesn't meet certain criteria. And yet the state over and over again shows that it will violate that criteria as often as it wants, as if it meets the individual's and power's interest.
You're doing that thing where like you're like saying like, well, hey, there's a contradiction here, but I'm not seeing it. Because to me, like I think the consistency is really this. If you're part of a governing body, then that governing body, or if you're part of a society and a society has certain rules of functioning, like obviously, then I think that then you have to agree or live by whatever the rules of that society. So at the state level, the state can say, hey, this is what happens and so on and so forth, and this is the way it goes. When the government, like the federal government, gets to govern certain things constitutionally and say, we're not going to let you states run wild and harm people. And so
right,
and so
but that
forth.
logic
As
falls
part of the
apart.
country.
That logic falls apart the moment that you engage with what is a society, especially like once you start looking at the individual and the idea of like whether or not it's okay that society imposes its will on the individual. But let's just look at the idea of society. What happens when this system of governance that you talk about encapsulates the entire world? Does it matter then that a society is different? Because I just laid out two totally different societies, New York City, and the people living in Nebraska. Those are very two different societies.
Sure, I got it. So explain. So the people who live in New York have an entirely different society. Like they have. There are definitely different degrees of a society, right? Like literally, people living in a household are functionally a society, right? But then, like within your house, you can have specific rules that might not apply to the rest of the state, right? And within that state, you might have certain rules that don't apply to the rest of the country, right? And within your country, you might have different rules that don't apply to the rest of the world.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Right. So like, yeah, it's just what you're just expressing to me is that there are different degrees of society, and so that these things end up functioning. I mean, so if we try to look at the rules and engagement of an individual society and then universally apply that, then like we're gonna start running into some contradictions. But like, who would do that without recognizing?
But you're already running in a contradiction, because the line of what is and isn't reasonable, once you say that you can tell people what they can do, despite the fact that the individual did not choose to voluntarily do this, is that line can be moved by those in positions of power.
Wait, what do you mean the individual didn't voluntarily try to do? Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, like if let's say half of the country didn't agree with half of the things, or 90% of the things that the Biden administration wanted to do, for example. They didn't agree voluntarily to do any of those things. Let's say they didn't agree to banning on new leases for oil, right? As just one example, right? That is a form, right, where you're saying, well, it's reasonable. Well, that line of what is and isn't reasonable to impose the will of a majority or an individual in power against those individuals is an arbitrary line. And so that's why I find the problem there is that the real answer here is to not impose your will on individuals unless you do so voluntarily and by your own domain and your own property.
Yeah,
There's no contradiction there.
So we have checks and balances specifically for the situations in which the rest of the country doesn't agree with something that Biden is doing, and the country can come together and if you have a Senate and a House that's like actually representing the will of the people, and enough people are unhappy about this thing, then they can introduce laws in order to actually.
So what is the country's what's the country's opinion on new leases?
So that the president doesn't have the ability to just sit here and say, I'm running wild with this and this is the way it's going to be, and no one can say anything about it.
What is the country's opinion on that? What is the country's opinion on new leases being granted for oil? What is the entire country's opinion?
Scott, my answer to you is it doesn't matter.
I don't think that there is an entire country. We live in a representative democracy. A lot of people compare it. I mean, like really complain about that thing to like a whole level. I think it's like a hot button issue.
Right. Yeah. What you're avoiding is that the country doesn't have an opinion.
I'm going to finish explaining.
There's conflict.
I'm going to finish answering your question.
You're not answering my question. You're dodging.
I'm going to finish answering your question.
I'm going to finish.
I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish.
Are you on an album with Tech Nine? Relax.
I'm going to finish answering your question. You're not going to interrupt me so that I can.
Okay, Tech Nina.
So, okay, all right. I'm going to finish answering your question. You're not going to interrupt me so that I can go ahead and so we can have a conversation. So what I would say is, if I don't know that is like a hot button issue. I don't think a lot of people have opinions on it. Hell, I don't. I don't think that most people are informed about that to have an opinion on it. But I would say if there was a case where people started having a very significant opinion about that thing, then they would probably start doing something about it in order to change it. And I think that's the way that the law is supposed to work. It seems like the system works in a sense that the president can't just do whatever the freak he wanted to do. Trump couldn't like just build his wall without like having like to go through some other processes, right? Like and you saw like he had to end up having to shut down the government because it was like, yeah, no, niggas aren't going to give you what you want. And of course that could like greatly impact his economy and things like that, which could like negatively impact him. And then there's other things that can be done to still undo the wall. So like, yeah, we have a policy in place that basically says that if we don't like the country, if the president just wants to run wild with his power and act a dang fool, then he can, obviously can be impeached. They can set laws, whatever, in order to like prevent things. So it's not like he just has unequivocal power. So it's, So
that was a really, really long gish gallop where you didn't answer anything because you avoided the fact that the simple fact is that representative democracy and all its checks and balances doesn't resolve conflict between individuals and people, and that instead it imposes its will arbitrarily upon people. Now you can say it's not arbitrary because we have representative democracy, but it is arbitrary to the people that are in the minority opinion or to the people that lack the power to be able to change these systems.
Well, I feel like I answered it pretty accurately. I think anybody else watching.
That's one of the reasons why republicanism is popular in our modern era, is it at least has some sort of protections of the minority against a majority. But I do want to say, Fabian, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I mean this with all due respect, this has been ringing in my head for about 20 seconds. Fabian is the man who is a fan of Ancapistan. And yes, I'm sorry. Like I'm just hearing like you just want Ancapistan to ring
he does that every
true.
Time.
But unfortunately,
he just subtly moves every conversation in that direction.
I get what you're talking about, Fabian. I do understand entirely, but what you're talking about is when can we get to a beautiful palatial mansion, and we need to move from mud hut to stone hut first. So we're not even close to what you're talking about. So what you're doing right now, right, is you're dismissing. I'm not talking about Ancapistan. What I'm talking about is a philosophy of rights and a philosophy of what is legally descriptively correct under natural law. If you don't like that, then don't invite me to panels.
Wait,
if you just want to have
legally descriptive under natural law.
Yes. If you don't like
those two aren't compatible at all.
Yes, they are.
No, there is no legal writing of natural law.
Yes, there is.
Where natural law comes from is from nature. That's why it's called natural.
That's not where it comes from.
I understand.
I understand.
People made natural law arguments from God in the Bible.
I think this is a reflection of how.
That's not what. That's just wrong. I don't know what to tell you, but like you're a poli-sci student. Maybe you should read some fucking John Locke. That being said.
I had to read John Locke for political science.
All right, we should read some more.
Political theory is under political science. This is a subdiscipline.
Again, I don't know what to tell you. Read Second Treatise on Government again. You seem to have missed a few things.
I had to do that. I had to do that as well.
Okay, well, you're wrong. So you're trying to tie it back to its historical roots, and then you slip in
Child, don't
God
take this
because
personal.
it's a
He's just trying to
deontological
disagree
argument.
with you.
Like
Child,
because
don't take it
it's
personal.
just
it was
Ignore him.
the morality of the history of natural law was originally based in deontological values that they believed came from God, but it doesn't come from nature, number one, and number two, that's not the natural law philosophy that I'm talking about in the Rothbardian tradition. That being said, KOE, what you were talking about by saying I'm just engaged in anarcho-capitalism. No, I'm fucking not. I'm talking about what are rights and what should we be doing and how should we be moving forward. And yeah, I'm going to say that we should be moving forward towards my political philosophy. I get that you disagree with that, but to say that I'm engaged in the utopia of anarcho-capitalism when I'm simply talking about where rights come from and what is right and wrong and how we should view our actions towards other people is bullshit. So please finish.
All I'm trying to tell you, Fabian, is I have a lot of sympathies for the way that you're thinking and a lot of your thought process here. But again, the species isn't ready for it yet. So you're somebody that's
Peep the name, dog.
Like
the
you're
channel's
trying to
name is
advocate for
Fabian
democracy
Liberty.
like 1226. It's like people are just looking like what
The
fuck
name
that?
is Fabian Liberty. I stole it from Fabian Society. The idea is
Oh, and by the way,
incrementalism.
everybody within the sound of my voice, he's absolutely right. Murray Rothbard's one of the best fucking economists you could ever listen to. His Econ 101 lectures are required listening, in my personal opinion.
Let's go to Doobie.
First off, you're all fucking nerds. Secondly, I wanted to know,
I
like,
resemble that.
I want to be super like clear, right? Because I think I misheard. But Fabian and Fanatic, I think you guys were agreeing that, you know, given that it is kind of like, you know, introducing a tribe to Christianity, right? Or I was actually going to use a similar Christian reference about like Adam and Eve, you know, eating from the tree of knowledge and then like realizing that they were naked, right? And being ashamed of it, where before they had been like living in innocence and didn't have any shame of being naked. So given that you guys agree that there is some kind of harm being done to these people by explaining this to them, that explaining it through your perspective, through your worldview, right, based on your system of morality and our civilization's version of like ethics or whatever the fuck, what they are doing is abuse and it is wrong. Are you guys saying that you wouldn't stop them, or you wouldn't impose that morality on them?
I wouldn't. I would not impose that morality on him. What I would do is I'd probably, well, I mean, I would impose, I would do like a soft imposition, which is I would like go and do my best to educate those people and like, hey, this is not necessary and so on and so forth, to discourage the behavior like passively. Because if I aggressively go and like try to tell other people how to live their lives, that they have their own like agency and autonomy, like it seems like it would just probably be like, I expect it to be resisted, right? Like people aren't going to sit here and just be like, oh, you think so? You think this is the way it should be? Okay, good. Then yeah, I'll just go with whatever you're saying. Like, why would they do that? In fact, people are going to become really resistant. It's like going into like staying at a friend's house over like a weekend and be like, you know, you guys, a system of like who uses it, like you guys should really like, they're going to start feeling like, what the freak, who are you and why would you like trying to be telling us how to live our lives? And that I think can cause violent, it can cause shutdown, they can be very, very resistant. I just don't think that it makes any sense. I think the best key is just to educate them and let them find it on their own.
I would add to what Fanatic is saying in just two simple things. I agree 100% with Fanatic. I would say, number one, I would also be willing to use violence to rescue anyone that wanted out of that situation after their education. If they believed that they were harmed and they could prove some form of harm, I would be perfectly fine bringing in armed people to rescue them from that tribe if they so asked. And if they tried to stop me, tell them to go fuck themselves. You guys are child molesters, and they can get mad about it or whatever, but I'm going to rescue that person if they want to be rescued. And the other thing that I would say, you know what, actually, I'll just leave it at that I would add that, like,
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I could agree with that. Yeah.
Well, okay,
yeah.
so I'm kind of curious as to like where the line is then, because I think before we said something like, you know, it's not really in our jurisdiction, right, to go around to the rest of the world and say, hey, we don't like this thing you're doing, so you need to stop doing it. I would disagree with that personally. I think that power gives you jurisdiction, right? So if your nation has a power to do this thing, you can. I think that's all.
Do you think Hitler did anything wrong to the Jews?
Yeah, of course.
But he had power. He had the power to do
Well,
it.
Yeah, of course. Well, within
Yeah,
his
but it's
like
that's why it
obviously
happened,
the guy's immorality still
Scott.
too. Like, come on,
Like
please.
Doobie isn't he's not saying that like you have power and that means you're right and that means like you
yeah,
do
I'm saying that
good
it gives you
things.
jurisdiction to impose your version of society or civilization, right? Now there can be other people who disagree with that, who also have power, who can come into conflict with you, which is what the United States did to Hitler, right? So yeah, I'm not.
So
saying
you think you're not saying Hitler did nothing wrong. You're saying if Hitler won, he would have done nothing wrong.
I think that's kind of how the world works, really. Generally,
Dude, fucking bite that bullet.
By the winners.
Hold on, I
me,
think that
bro.
generally. Hold on, no, wait, hold on.
Well done, Fady.
I'm being serious with you. There's no. I don't see how this is a bullet. This is just human civilization. So we can say in America, right? The United States genocided many indigenous groups, and took their land. But we won. So they're on reservations, and I say fuck them. And as somebody who's like a descendant from one of those indigenous groups, I'm glad the United States won, right? Because now I get to live in a very comfy society, in spite of all the rape and torture and murder that was done to achieve that, right? And so yeah, I think that's just how human civilization works.
Wow, that's crazy. I would say, while I agree with like his original prescription about power, like does give you some of those parts, certain parts of that. I would also make the statement that I would say that there is going to be like your own morality system that you're going to subscribe to, which is obviously going to be somewhat arbitrary. And I would say that those things also like they have an impact as well. So like, yes, you have the hit. I don't think I have to bite the bullet saying Hitler did nothing wrong. I think instead I would say what Hitler did was wrong, and his power gave him the ability to start imposing his will, but the second his will falls out of alignment for what I consider to be moral, then I'm going to say that now he's wrong for doing that thing. And I think
that's just a Fifi's argument.
Wait, but I think that. So I obviously I'd agree with that.
If you want to call it a
right?
Fifi's argument, I would say no. I don't have to be. I think you can logically say like that. This like from a utilitarian standpoint that like, hey, this thing would be harmful or whatever to other people and so on and so forth. Like that's that.
Yeah, I don't think you could.
Wait, can I explain really quickly? Because I like obviously like my version of like morality isn't like in line with Hitler's, right? I'm not okay with genociding people, but I understand and I accept, and I think this is probably like the core disagreement. I don't think that morality comes from like any like natural law or from like God or anything like that, right? I think that there's like a lot of fuzzy stuff happening. Prem, I think your mic's hot. It's like lots of fuzzy.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So yeah, I've just come to accept that what I think is moral and correct is just the result of socialization and the culture that I grew up in, and things I've been exposed to in video games and TV and discussions with people over the years, and my own personal like research and curiosity. But that's it, right? So if Hitler had won, and I grew up in a society that taught me that hey, actually it was okay to massacre all these people, then I might think that, right? And that would just be, again, how human civilization works.
But that's not the question, because the question wasn't
my lack of capacity of informed consent point.
No. But that wasn't the question, because the question wasn't would he have said he was right. Like, that wasn't it. It's would he have been right. And so I think you have to take into consideration whatever your moral precepts and presuppositions are, and you say based off of like my moral system, then yeah, he would have been wrong. Now, could he have lied and said that he was right? Sure. Could the South still lies and says that they were right and just in what in their pursuits to maintain slavery, right? Like they can say that, but we all know that they're wrong, right? So yes, he would have been wrong even if he had won. He would have just lied.
But they're wrong. They're wrong based on our subjective like construction of like morality.
Beautiful. I want to connect those two
a
points.
Standard of behavior that applies to all people across all time.
Hey, if
And
you
so
want to,
that's
but I don't think it makes sense.
Untime them out.
that totally makes sense.
Be my guest.
Just things like slavery, the initiation of the use of force, rape. These
Don't
are all things that are just
list the
wrong
things-
under every
Don't list the
circumstance.
things that actually apply. Like
Well,
list
no,
things
not
that
under the
list the
circumstances of
things that wouldn't
history. Back
apply.
then,
Like, how about
slavery was
looking at the
okay.
things like-
People can
like-
justify it to themselves how they want,
think
but
about-
in
think
reality,
about the
it
age
was
of
immoral.
consent and how the age of consent wouldn't have been wrong for some people. It wouldn't
So
have
it's
been
a
wrong
standard
back
of
then.
behavior that
It-
applies to
it
all
wouldn't-
people across
almost
it
all the time.
wouldn't have been wrong at an individual level for a person to be like married to a young person, maybe back in the day, if that was like if that was the standard. I mean, if that was the moral standard. But then as we gain new information, now our standard of behavior changes, right?
It's just
Like
society allowed a little more exploitation back in the day doesn't mean that it's actually kind of sort of maybe actually good. No, it's just
what
so yeah, to me,
Well,
morality
these
is
two
just a standard
understandings
way
of
of
morality
looking at
aren't so
everything across
different.
all time.
That's
So,
an
I mean,
incredibly reductive and retarded way of saying what I'm
it
saying.
is.
It's not that society had more leeway. The difference would be here is that like now we have new information, and that information might like guide our like morality and our system for what's acceptable and what's not. Like maybe things like, for example, like back in the day, like riding people in the back of your pickup truck like without seatbelts on. Right, there was no problem with that. It was perfectly legal, and there wasn't an issue. Or like making
That still
homes
goes
with,
on around here.
making homes with asbestos. Right, like there was nothing. It wasn't illegal. Right, but we can now say, now that we recognize like the harms that come from these things, it would be a problem. Or a better example, smoking cigarettes. Secondhand smoke wasn't thought to be harmful. People were allowed to smoke in freaking hospitals, like around pregnant people, around children, right, at schools, things like that. But now we know these things are harmful. So now we would say, based off of the information we have now, that we shouldn't be doing these things. So morality does change. Morality is going to be based off of the information and whether or not we can track it to certain harm. So then just having a standard now and having a standard now and not being able to look back and recognize that other people who didn't have that information would not have the same standard just seems like complete ignorance.
Fanatic,
They
the
have
problem,
existed in
fanatic.
world
The
that they
problem with
were,
that,
but there's a lot
fanatic,
of moral concessions that we have to make even in our modern day.
fanatic. The problem with that
That
is
doesn't address anything I just said.
So,
fanatic. The
go
problem
ahead,
with that,
Scott, and then Doobie.
fanatic. The issue with this is that you're engaging in this conversation as if utilitarianism or like some consequentialism is the only means by which of engaging in a conversation on normative ethics, right? Deontological principles don't change. Virtue ethics can change based off of what virtues a society deems, better. But even the issue with your example of constantly saying new information changes what is right and wrong. Well, first of all, that means that you're admitting that there is no universal right or wrong, right? And therefore imposing morality on other people is already an issue, full stop, because you've already admitted that what is right and wrong can change. So what you're really engaging in is a form of like rule consequentialism, where you're kind of discovering, principles or axioms, maybe, kind of, not really, but kind of in your form of consequentialism. The problem with that is that you don't have a crystal ball. You can't see into the future. So for example, when talking about age of consent, you can say, well, we've discovered, right, that it's wrong to be married to a 15-year-old girl. But what if a meteor comes and wipes out almost all of human civilization, and there is an extremely small amount of humans left? All of a sudden then, the age of consent would be morally wrong to impose that because we've got to get our birth rates up, or the human race will not survive, right? So like you can't engage in saying new information changes what those morals are unless you admit that there is no objective morality, that morality is completely subjective from person to person. And if you want to engage in that, that's fine, but you can't make positions saying this is morally right and this is morally wrong, because that's only your opinion. And therefore you either have to default to Doobie's version of might makes right, and therefore we will use our might to force our subjective opinion of morality on others, or B, you have to come to my position and understand that you should separate those morals and assume the non-aggression principle and decide that Hitler, whether you want to say he's morally right or wrong, what you can say is he's legally a criminal because he committed acts of violence and theft and genocide, and that those things are against the non-aggression principle. And actually, you can't argue against it because to do so would violate the precepts of argumentation ethics. Those are the only two positions you can have.
I disagree with the very first thing you said. One, deontological laws do change over time. Like deontology can be literally just subscribing to something like the Bible. I'm saying, well, the
someone
Bible
can have
says,
different.
Wait, hold on, let me bro, come
not
on. You just went
true.
on a while and I didn't say a word. Shut up. Jesus.
Right, but you're just saying
anyway,
untrue
shut up.
So I'm just calling out bullshit.
Shut up. You said a whole bunch of nonsense and I sat there as you went with your drivel and I didn't say a word. Shut up. Let me talk. Jesus. What the freak? Anyway, so like obviously, like so maybe like a deontological principle could be something like subscription to like the Bible, right? And thinking to yourself like, oh, well, the Bible says this and so on and so forth. But we can get new editions of the Bible, right? The Bible itself can change. People and like for
No.
example, people like freaking Jehovah's Witnesses, they got like 4 or 5 different editions, right? Like, or you can have like an Old Testament and a New Testament, right? Like there's plenty of things that you can do where you can have brand new exegetes like in Islam that like give you like new whatever so that you have like new understanding of the laws, and then those things change, right? Like it wasn't like
No.
the Quran is the it's not like the Quran is the only thing. So first off, that statement, deontological like laws don't change, it's just absolutely wrong. Secondly, when you start talking
No.
about like the new secondly, when you start talking about nigga, you can't help but interrupt. I'm just gonna mute you. Secondly, when you start talking about like the new the like oh the like the meteor comes and wipes out half of the whatever, so on and so forth, right? Now new information might cause those things to change. This is how you like this is where you get like different deontological movies. I mean, I'm sorry, dystopian movies, right? Where you have like these ideas where it's like there's some sort of catastrophic event which causes people to have to react in a specific way, which can result in some sort of like harms, like some sort of society where we say, oh, this seems a little like gross, like it seems like the way that they're like manipulating people or doing whatever the freak they're doing is wrong. I think this is one of those situations where like, hey, if we are now at a place where we have to like for the survival of humanity, like take away certain people's freedoms and certain people's choices and things like that, yeah, then those are decisions that we make. That's the new information. So it seems like, yeah, the new information would change things. So it sounds like we're agreeing still.
No, we're not agreeing. And first and foremost, I'll be real quick and just let it down. First of all, deontological positions don't change. New systems and new deontological beliefs might occur, and then people adopt that form of deontology. That is not the same thing. Like to say that a new religion is born, therefore Christianity's morality changed,
That's
is
not what
just
I said.
wrong.
It's the New Testament.
Okay.
That's not what I said at
You
all.
absolutely did say that. First of
No,
all,
I didn't.
Second
Okay,
of all,
sure.
no, the core principles did not change, which is hilarious. But even if they did, it wouldn't matter because it would be a new religion, right? Like Christianity is not the same thing as Judaism. These are two different deontological positions because they have different beliefs, right? That's why Christians and Jews are not the exact same thing. Second of all, you completely circumnavigated the entire issue that I brought up with consequentialism. You completely circumnavigated all the points that I made and then just dismissed it as nonsense because I don't know, either you can't contend with it intellectually or because you don't want to. One way or the other, that's what you did. So it's just, yeah, I mean, like, I think your non-answer will suffice for the audience to know that I'm right and you're wrong.
That's fine. Okay, DB, please.
Well, maybe it's a nitpick, right? But I don't think that the issue is new information. Like for example, I was in a debate this past weekend, yesterday, the day before yesterday, I can't remember, one of these days, with like Nick Fuentes, right? And it was about like this war, whether or not there's a war on men, right? And Nick and the other guy that the other people that were with him have a very like specific view of like woman's role in society that they say comes from the Bible, but I don't think it does. But there's no like new information that could be provided to them, I think, because they have access to the internet. They have access. They were raised in this culture that taught them about, women having some form of like equality, social equality, the ability to work, et cetera, et cetera. But they disagree, right? They have a preference that women are in the home, raising the children, et cetera, et cetera. And that's it, right? They don't care about new information. They disagree with the new information. They would say that even if there's some kind of like benefit to like productivity benefit to the workplace, women should still be out of the workplace because it's not their place, right? Their place is in the home raising the children.
Somebody
And we
lost
could look to
when
countries
they're
in the
having to
Middle
do
East where
hardcore
in many of
damage
these
control
countries,
with their
it's totally
audience
socially acceptable
afterwards,
to for a 50-year-old
and
man
like
to
make an
marry a
argument
little-
that
a
I
child,
can't hear.
right? To have arranged marriages where grown-ass men are marrying like 10-year-olds and sleeping with them, or just outright purchasing them from their parents. Right. I don't think the issue is new information. I think the issue is like a fundamental disagreement on the framework of what makes up like their moral system. Right. So I think that I don't know if it makes sense to say, hey, we're gonna educate these people out of having child wives and shit like this. It seems more like, to me anyway, like I would say, if we had the ability to hey, you don't get to have child wives anymore, not because it's objectively wrong, but because we believe it's wrong, and because we have the ability to impose this upon you, and if you do it, you're gonna be punished. Right? I think that's enough. I don't think you need to educate these people out of this. I don't think the issue is education in a lot of these cases. It's literally just like a disagreement on like preferences.
Yeah, the might makes right isn't turned out too well in history. But Jay Chow, real quick, are you I haven't heard a lot from you. Are you just trying to catch your breath while you're wearing that fucking face diaper?
No, I just can't get in. I think you guys are more interested in yelling over each other and not actually agreeing to some sort of a conclusion or like a marriage between the two ideas. Because I actually think like the argument between you and Fanatic, it's not that far apart, and like how Ko's understanding of like what is right or wrong and with Doobie is also not that far apart. But I think there's just like an issue of I don't know, constant disagreement.
Wait, no, Jay Chow, don't label us all that way. That's just him. Like, I wasn't trying to yell over him. He went on a long soliloquy in which the opening line he gave was specifically that deontological rules don't change. I obviously disagreed with that and gave 3 different examples of that. But I waited until he was done with everything else, and I addressed that point, and then I addressed his next point, and then I addressed his next point. I'm not just trying to just disagree with niggas just to disagree with niggas. I'm actually listening and engaging in the conversation. This nigga is the one that just wants to talk over everybody and just wants to disagree because he just wants to go ahead and tweak his nipples about like his ANCAP dream, which will never happen because
I really don't want to get really meta with this, but like you're already like being really combative with how you describe Fabian Liberty. So like
I'm being combative because of what he did in response to what he did originally, like with interrupting me nonstop. If you can't see what actually happened there, then yeah, I guess maybe you can maintain your erroneous position.
Okay, so now the well is poisoned between you and me, but I'm gonna have to agree. I think Fabian Liberty has the right approach to what it means to be how to understand deontological norms. Deontological norms are based on rules as well as duty. When you say that murder is always wrong, the always means in the past, in the present, and in the future, it is always wrong. And then for you to change your mind to say like, oh, murder is no longer wrong because maybe there's like a new book, a new testament, or whatnot, that doesn't mean that the deontological norm changes. It means you just switch to a different deontological. Maybe you go in the reverse. Oh, murder is no longer always wrong, and things like that. And I think like to get to the larger point, the best way to view and explain morality while you're considering history, because in different points in time we have different understandings, we have different knowledge. Taking that point from you, I agree with that. We have a different understanding of what is right and wrong, and even in this day, when I think like Fanatic, you kind of like a bit of psychoanalyze. Fanatic, do you think like you are like morally a good person?
I mean, I guess it's really rough because like as a Christian, like I think we all make mistakes, and I think the Bible makes it pretty clear where it says none are good except for God the Father, like Jesus himself said those words. So I don't know. It's a difficult thing to say. I mean, what do you mean by morally good person? Define.
Well, how about this? Like, and instead of like using you as in context, I feel like a lot of people think that themselves today are like morally good people. Now, that doesn't mean that they're perfect, but like they have an understanding of what is good and they replicate that as much as possible. And even when like they do bad things, they'll say like, no, I'm still doing good things because of X, Y, and Z. They'll try to explain themselves, and we'll have disagreements over and over again. But then there might be a time in the future, maybe 100 years later, 1,000 years later, where all of a sudden an entire society agrees that what we were doing that we thought was good is actually like abjectly horrifying. It deserves to be punished in like the greatest depths of hell and whatnot. Like back then, a lot of people thought that slavery was pretty pog, and that's why it was done. They even made more arguments as to why it was pog. But then time has transversed, and we know better and whatnot. We could continuously say that we've updated our morality to say that okay, well back then that was wrong. And so then this kind of leads me to believe that when it comes to morality, really the best way to understand it is that it is subjective, and that like in order to convince and to kind of like spread our moral system in order to in our minds for our own goals maximize the morality in the world, then in a way we do have to impose onto other groups of people, other cultures and whatnot.
So I would say that one, I don't think that it was like a common belief that slavery was good. I think there were some people who were in positions of power who were arguing that slavery was good and being as disingenuous as possible in order to maintain their power so that they could actually maximize their profits. Because I think they did know that it was good, and I think they were also very afraid of the fact that like it would eventually become knowledge that this thing was problematic, and then they would lose that power. So they did so many things in order to like continue to like make people not see black people as humans during that time, even though they obviously knew they were humans. If they didn't have that fear, then they wouldn't have been making laws such as like if you can't educate them, because they knew that if you taught them to read, then now they would actually start having better reasoning and better arguments for why what their conditions were unfair and unsafe and so on and so forth. And so I think they knew. I think they just wanted to maintain their power. Secondly, I would say deontology isn't just like subscription towards like again, deontology can be like subscription to any sort of laws, right? Again, subscription to the Bible would be a deontological belief. I have a lot of deontological beliefs as a practicing Christian. So like, but I also recognize that like living in a society that I'm probably going to have to abandon some of those when it comes to like communing with other people. And so I would think that the idea that like deontology can't change. I don't understand how you could say that Fabian Liberty is right in saying that deontology doesn't change.
No, because your
let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
When again we have all these examples, like for example in Islam, where they had a deontological principles based on their books, and then those things changed. Or when you look at like Jehovah's Witnesses, where they had a book that said something, and then later on that thing changed, and then they're still part of the same religion. Or you look at Mormons, or I mean, Lord, I mean, just think of a lot of religions have changed over time. The Catholic Church changes over time. So, like the idea that like deontological principles don't change is just it's crazy. Of course, these things like change over time, and they're still part of the same organizations. I don't know how you could say that that's correct.
I don't understand why you won't just take me out here.
You're
just wrong.
I'm talking to Fabian. Jay Chow was talking to you. Can you respond, please?
So Jay Chow was fine, but I do want to get KOE in here soon. Okay.
You're such a hurt little bitch.
That's what I am. Jay Chow, can you please respond, please?
Yeah, so then your deontological belief isn't actually changing. What's changing is what the deontological belief is telling you to do. So if your deontological belief is, oh, I believe in the Bible and what the Bible says, okay, well, sometimes the Bible could change or your religion could change. That's your argument as to what you're following may change, but not the actual rule of, oh, I believe in the Bible and what the Bible is saying. So then another example would be, okay, I'm a child and I have the deontological belief that the parents is always right, so I always follow them. Well, sometimes parents could, no, not something, always parents are inconsistent. They will have double standards and they will do what they seems fit. But no. Okay, but I'm just like, okay, even though you've changed your mind, even though you're saying something different from one day to another, I still hold the deontological belief that you are right, and I'm going to follow what you're going to say. So that's kind of like what you're bringing up is like you're confusing the actual rule with what you have to follow.
No, what you're saying,
the identity.
One second. Hold on one second. Yeah, I want to let KOE in, and you can respond to all of it afterwards. I just gotta let some other people in. Go ahead.
Stupid.
Thank you, good sir. But a couple of things I wanted to. One thing I wanted to push back on with you, Jay Chow, and one thing I was actually going to agree with you here. One thing I need to push back heavily, sir, is it's not it's Phil KOE of KOE Nation on YouTube. You can say whatever you like about me, just get the name right, good sir. But that's the one thing I had to push back on heavy. But the one thing I'm going to agree with you here, there is oh, come on, I am never above shameless self-promotion. Come on now. But what I do have to agree with you here is there seems to be a very odd, almost agreement in philosophies, but like heavy walls because of personalities happening in this discussion. Like with Fabian and Fanatic, at first there was actually, it seemed like some actual agreement here, and then there was a personality clash, and then that's when, and like me and Doobie, he loves me. He and I were like a box of fluffy doves together. We get along like oil and water. It's great. But like, so I understand what you're getting at there. But it's kind of the unusual thing that happens when you get on these panels is ideology and politics makes for odd bedfellows. And one last thing I wanted to talk about is like Fanatic, you were talking about there was people that probably wanted to get rid of slavery a long time ago. Oh, yes, absolutely. There were abolitionists in the 1400s that were thinking we need to get rid of slavery. But this is also kind of a point that I wanted to make to you, Fabian, is when you're talking about getting rid of the state. When you were somebody that was advocating for the end of slavery in 1400, people were like, well, how will the crops even be brought in? And if you were to say, well, you see, we've got these incredible machines that are going to be invented because we're going to have a huge explosion in the cost of labor. And so you're going to have a huge explosion of labor-saving devices. And so we're going to have these machines that just suck up all the crops. They're going to be fueled by crushed up dinosaur bones that we suck out of the ground. And that's what the future is going to look like once you get rid of slavery. That would sound like a non-answer, and they would wonder what kind of drugs you were on, because you can't really tell what's the future going to look like. And also, like, and that's what I mean when I say like you advocating for what you are. It's kind of like saying, well, if you want to get rid of a state, well, how is the road going to be fucking built? Well, the answer would sound like a non-answer. And so to me, like what ended up winning the day with slavery was the moral argument. It was, these are children of God, every one of them. They cannot be owned. They are children of God like you, children of God like me. So it wasn't some utilitarian argument. It was the argument for morality that ended up winning. And with that, Fanatic, I'll yield to you and let you respond.
Can I respond to what he said to me, the straw man of anarcho-capitalism?
I'm not strawmanning
you.
I'm
want
just
to do that
you,
before
like,
I respond to
species
Jay?
ain't ready for it.
Go ahead. It's all yours, buddy.
Look, I'll try and be quick. I know you got your new beef. So no, that's just not the answer that anarchists gave in the 1800s. It's not the answer that the anarchists gave in the 1900s, right? We were always against slavery, and we were always making the moral argument, and that's just the historical fact. So we already have that example, right? And what I'm doing now
of getting rid of slavery then is a lot like your argument for getting rid of the state now. Is like, it's just seen as so alien as where we are as a species right now. It just isn't going to compute. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to tell you that's how it is in the world we are now. Unfortunately,
I am making not quite the moral argument. I am making the descriptive legal argument as to why these things shouldn't be done if we have the moral imposition to avoid conflict. If you have a moral imposition, if you don't have a moral imposition to avoid conflict, then you can't argue with me about it, because I'm not getting into argumentation ethics. We can talk about that if you ever want to come hang out on my channel for it. But the fact of the matter is that we've always made that moral argument as anarchists, and I would do so now. And that is the argument that I think will win. And I think once people understand philosophy and we can bring people over to that, we will understand why these not philosophically grounded positions are so fucking hilarious that are being said here. Like this idea that deontology can shift and change, which it can't, or you know what I mean? Like your identity of things can change, but deontological beliefs can't. And if they do, then you're adopting a new deontological system. That's just definitionally true. It really shouldn't be arguing about it on this panel. It's so far away from Faroese Whaling, which I wanted to talk about, but whatever.
Fanatic?
I don't got anything to say to that. You good? We're good. Keep going.
You want nothing to Jay Chow or anything?
No, I don't remember what he said. It's fine.
Okay.
Rock and roll. Well, how about them whales, huh? Boy, we sure.
I have a question.
Yeah, so then like trying to take like what I've said to apply onto the island and the dolphin killing. If people feel like they want to protest,
time to read chat then.
I fully support
will you
that,
stop
and,
spamming,
that shouldn't be
Isaac?
repressed. Now, like if it suddenly gets violent, then I think that changes. And
I'm not going to
maybe,
use your
I'll be
arguments
more
because your
okay with
arguments
what
are.
Scott was saying
Oof.
earlier of okay, island goers, you could take up arms and start doing stuff instead of spearing dolphins. You could, I guess, spear humans. I don't know. but then it all goes back down to, well, we all have different understandings of morality, and we all have this urge to want to maximize the good in the world. Now I think while that is okay, and that's like a good intention, and that's something that I would want all people to kind of strive for, I think another element that we also have to consider, and kind of what Fanatic was pointing out to before a little bit, was how can we do that in the most effective way? Because kind of just being a woke skull, or just like the typical environmentalist that you see getting cringe compilations on YouTube or whatnot, is probably not going to be working out. As what Fanatic said, you're very likely to be met with backlash, and not actually being able to reach an understanding of, hey, this is harmful, and like maybe you should like reconsider what you're doing and whatnot, and because that's how you're actually going to be able to maximize good. Which then, I'm just going to stop there.
So okay, yeah, we did get way off, but like you guys were having interesting discussion, so I was fine with it. But for the remaining time we have, yeah, it was interesting. It was fun. For the remaining time that we have on this topic, I want to talk about something that Scott brought up a way long time ago, talking about a Japanese whaling, right? And how like there has been a massive push from the West, a massive push to get them to knock that shit off. And if the Japanese, right, and I believe it's a show, so, but I could be wrong. But if the Japanese happen to be doing a certain level of harm, meaning that the whales were endangered, then we would impose our morality, right? Like, I think everyone agrees there, right?
No. I would kill every fucking whale to make one child smile. If I could prove that it would do no harm to humans and it would do help to humans, I don't give a fuck. I'd kill them all. It would do harm to humans because it would damage the fucking ecosystem and it would do all these other things, right? But like, I don't give a fuck about whales. They don't have personhood. I give a fuck about humans.
So you don't think? Go ahead.
I can at least respect the consistency. You know, I got it. Like it's within a consistent framework. Like I don't.
Or beat
agree
puppies
with
to
that
death
idea
for
personally.
like ever.
Like, you know, I'm a farmer. I grow life for a living, so it's like now we all need each other. Trust me. Like it's, but I understand. Like to me, it's the paradox of life. Is that whether even if you're a vegan, if you're a strict vegan, plant life is still life, and it's the odd paradox of life. Whether you try to make moral concessions or try to make moral stands on it, is
Creepy
that life
Creepo
must
World took that
life
literally.
to sustain
fuck
life.
dolphin, fuck whales.
That is the paradox of life. And so, to me personally, I find this practice unusual, but it's a cultural. It's what they do, and it's what their whaling tradition is probably going back to one of the oldest traditions in humanity, because. I mean, you could go back to records that go into time in memoriam for it, but to me, as long as they're not like affecting the ecosystem, I think like because I used to watch the Sea Shepherd show, the Whale Wars show, and I just used to love watching the escalation of each season. Like, okay, the Japanese whalers got all this stuff, and now the Whale Wars people got this stuff, and that always kind of fascinated me watching that part of it. And so long as it's like a cat and mouse and nobody's getting hurt. You know, God bless with God bless with everything on that regard, but so long as nobody gets hurt, like, yeah, the protesters can do their protesting in the goddamn Arctic if you want to go to the fucking Arctic. Jesus.
I think there's a better question, and I think this might be what people are intuitively shocked by, right? And I think the better question is the abuse of animals something that psychologically transfers into the way that humans treat each other? Because I think that's the real question that like people are picking up on. Because I mean, sure, you're going to have whale wars people. You're going to have whale wars people that are like, oh my God, the pretty little dolphins, they deserve life and they think like animals deserve rights, right? Those people are going to be like your fringe fucking watermelons, right? Green on the outside, red on the inside, whatever. But like I think for a lot of people that see this and they go, that's barbaric, I don't like that, because they see so much like they see the way that it occurs. They see like the joy in killing, right? They see the seas run red with blood and think, how can those people not think this is wrong? I think what they're picking up on, their intuition might possibly be picking up on, is a concept that by acting so aggressively towards something so aesthetically pleasing, this cute animal, right? Or that this thing that we think of as like kind of smart, because we look at dolphins as some of the smarter animals in the animal kingdom. What they're really picking up on is, if they treat these sweet little innocent creatures like that, what does that do psychologically in the way that they treat other humans? And I think that might be what people's real aversion is, more so than the idea of like hurting the dolphin.
Well,
So you think
Wait, people are averse to like
an act of hate and an act of love can sometimes be the same act. It can seem like it's very hateful when you kill the deer, but it's an act of love to provide food for your family. And so, like, I'm curious, has anybody in this panel ever taken part in butchery of their own meat before? Has anybody ever done? Anybody on this panel ever done that?
Done what? I'm sorry.
I bought
Yeah,
meat
Taken part of
before
butchery
and
of your
cut
own
it.
meat.
Yeah.
Like, I've butchered my own
Yeah.
meat before. Like, yeah, and so, like, to me, like, that's just one of those things. Like, yes, it can be a bit of a gory thing at the moment, but that's what I mean when I say in the moment. There are moments in this life where an act of hate and an act of love can seem like the very same act. And so, like, when I go hunting or when I help butcher somebody's hog or a cow or something, like, I'm always very appreciative of the meat, and it's always I don't want to say like almost a pseudo-religious experience when you go like, thank you for what you're about to provide for me for the year. And so I could very much understand like even the people in this Faroe Island having a very similar experience with their
Oh, for sure.
pirate whales and their dolphin, like,
Pilot.
if it's part of your hunting experience, it's part of the way that you sustain yourself. And this is one thing that like a lot of people get wrong when they're trying to wag their fingers at each other in today's modern world. And it's the idea that what people put in their body and eat is such a tremendously intimate and personal experience. It really is one of those, who the fuck are you to say what the fuck, so when people try to say, no, you shouldn't eat that, you should eat this, it really is a, who the fuck are you? Like, what people eat is one of the most intimate and personal experiences that a person can have in their day. And so it's one of those, to me, if the folks in Japan, so long as they're not damaging the ecosystem and they're playing cat and mouse with protesters in the Arctic and they're just, that's how they're doing it, fair, have at it. That's the
I
way
don't
they're
know.
doing it.
I want to test for
the
consistency.
Faroe
Okay,
Islands-
what about cannibals? Human cannibals?
Oh, jeez, we don't have to go there.
It's
So
it's
wait, so
intimate.
you're asking me why? Well, because humans are or of a creature of volitional consciousness, and animals are a creature of automatic.
Just say they're a moral
Humans.
agent. It's easier. Just say they're a moral agent.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna take about 10 minutes to get there, but yes. The morality is a human construct, and it applies to humans. It's a human.
Well, animals
concept.
also have their own moral
Animals,
constructs as well.
tables and chairs, and animals know not what they do. Can you show me an animal that can demonstrate knowledge that goes beyond its natural instincts, in which when it fails, it will die? Can you show me an animal that does?
What?
Any animal,
Say that again?
its knowledge will only keep it alive for as long as its instincts, its natural instincts, are ingrained into it. And that is as long as the animal will survive. The moment its instincts fail it, it will die. Can you show me any animal that can do anything beyond that?
Who does?
I'll wait.
What animal
I'll
does
wait.
that?
I'll wait.
Do humans do that?
I think it's like-
or do all animals do that? I'm still confused.
I think he's saying that humans do that.
Yeah.
Fanatic. Go
Humans
ahead.
are the only creature of volitional consciousness. We can actually choose our own destruction every day, but we don't.
What? Wait, animals could also do that as well.
No, they
No, they-
can't.
No, they don't.
No, they
How-
can't.
how-
They're
they
they're
can't?
creatures of automatic instinct.
Yeah,
Show me
You
an
don't
animal
think, you
that's
don't think
committed
animals
willings.
make choices? I mean, like
That's
we
what-
also have instincts as well.
Not beyond what their instincts are ingrained in their DNA.
Oh, I'm not sure about that, because you see dogs will like stay at the grave of their owner, and then
Oh,
like
yeah, I've got
die
a really
there.
nice dog, really loyal, comes right to me every day, like all the time. I feed it. That's why.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
like,
like they'll
it is
just die.
Animal. Okay, and like
Oh.
what? Unfortunately,
Yeah,
what
and
happens?
our
Is people
instinct
like
is when we get
idolize
hungry, we get
animals.
food.
I won't
What?
die on this hill. Unlike that dog, but like a fanatic. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I do think that like we do start like when you ask that who are you? Well first off, I, I think you're doing some fast and loose here, like because when no one's looking at like a person butchering, or most people like I can't say no one because there are the insane PETA people. We shouldn't be looking at like the butchering of an animal as like an act of hate. It sounds crazy as freak. People are doing it because they want to eat. And I think anyone that's calling it an activate hate is just like is a psychoactivist that just doesn't like want to live in reality, and they're just trying to emotionally trigger you and like emotionally bully you into like going with whatever the freak that they're saying. Secondly, I'd say that we do like have like the reason why we typically tell like we start getting involved with what other people are eating is because we do assign some sort of emotional thing to like pets, right? Like because like dogs are so domesticated and they're pets in this society, then in this society we tend to like look down upon people that would eat a dog, right? Like that's it, and it makes sense. It's like, yo, that's our pets. We've always looked at them as such. So I think in the same sense, when you see someone eating or doing something that you think is inappropriate, it makes sense why you would like step in there, right? Like, because it's like, well, you're eating this thing that we look at it like we look at it like a person, because the more something is like intertwined within our culture. Sorry, I'm trying to make decisions in this game at the same time while I'm playing. But the more something is intertwined within our culture, then the more like emotional attachment we have to it. Like I value dogs because like we've always had dogs. I don't value cats because I grew up without cats. And so other people who have had dogs or whatever their entire life, or who have had cats their whole life, might love cats and hate dogs and so on and so forth. I didn't really value dolphins in the same sense until I started learning about dolphins and how insanely intelligent they are. And the more intelligent I recognized that they were, then the more it was like, hey, these things are pretty cool and we probably shouldn't be eating them, right? I think it makes sense for us just as a society to do that. We value the things that resemble us. And so the more sentient something seems, then the more we're going to value it. Plants, they're not sentient, so that's why we don't care for them.
Well, I don't know if you know this. In China, I forget the province, but there actually is a dog meat festival that they have every year in some place, and they eat and so that's one of those things. Like, okay, are we gonna push back on that as well? Are we gonna like?
Oh, that had to
far do we
be
take
like.
that?
Yeah, we do
China
push
put
back
rules
on it.
against it because of COVID.
Yeah, but it's one of those you think in the rural areas, people are going to do what they're going to do. I mean, it's kind of like what happened here in Nebraska. In the rural areas, people just kind of did what they were going to do. Like, there wasn't really, like, and so, like, it's
yeah, and
really
then, like,
big
we eat
controversy.
pigs, and then in other
me, it's
people
just a
across the
dog
world
owner.
think, like
Okay.
cows or pigs are, like, sacred. So then, like, that's also true for us as well.
I mean, I don't know that like how intelligent an animal here is really the question, right? The question is the animal a moral agent? Is the animal able to be held responsible for its decisions because of its ability to be able to discern right from wrong? Do you know any animals that have that capacity?
Well, it's not about them believing what is right or wrong and then choosing what is right or wrong.
Well, then you're just circumnavigating.
I know there are. I know there are. Well, I mean, like, if you're understanding it via moral agency, then I can see how that works. But the other route is, instead of viewing it under the lens of moral agency, why not we view sentientism under the lens of whether or not they're able to feel emotion or pain, happiness, love, sadness, and things like that. So then all of a sudden what it comes down to is, okay, now it's up to us to be the moral agents to not cause that pain onto other animals. That's what I've heard.
Okay, why is pain wrong?
Would you want to get hurt?
Depends on the situation.
Well, if you had to choose, would you want to?
Get on the weekend.
Again, it depends on the situation. You know what I mean? I might be a masochist. I might enjoy getting hurt.
It's like a bad pain. It's a pain you don't want to have.
It's a bad pain. So even when you try and it's a bad pain. So even when you try and circumnavigate the argument of moral agency, the only thing you have to go back into the moral framework. because we're talking
Yeah,
a question
I'm
of
pretty
ethics.
sure like dogs don't want to get beaten, cats don't want to get beaten, and like I've kind of seen the videos of them being scared of other humans because they were abused. I also think that like animals going into slaughterhouses don't want to go there. I've also seen videos of them trying to run away in the other direction of them getting pointed to the slaughterhouse because they don't want to die and things like that.
Does a mosquito want to die?
Oh, probably not.
Right. So should you just let the mosquito suck your blood and give you malaria?
Well, see, but then now you're
Let's say it doesn't give you malaria,
I would
right?
say
It doesn't
no. I mean,
get you
me
sick.
Personally, I would say no.
Right. Like it's not going to give you malaria. Like is it a moral evil? Are you a Jainist? Like do you think it's a moral evil to slap the mosquito in your
Well,
arm?
I'm not arguing from myself. I'm arguing from what I've heard from other people. And that's just like a different route to take. So like if you want to argue with them about
I mean,
like,
fair enough. If it's not your position,
uh,
then questioning your position isn't that helpful. And I'll just reassert that it's moral agency is the question here, because when asked about it, you eventually revert back to the understanding of morality in terms of your description of pain.
Well, like in terms of like who has the agency in order to take action, and when I read certain moral agency into the framework that I was talking about, I put it in the context of it's up to us to be that moral agent to not spread that harm and to not spread that pain onto other animals, perhaps.
But why is it wrong morally, right, to cause pain? Like, because it seems that you've used a utilitarian calculus, right, throughout our conversation involving ethics, right? So it seems to me like if that is the position, I'm not going to sit here and attack utilitarianism. I'm actually going to use your moral framework. If that is your moral framework, and the idea here is harm reduction, why is harm reduction applying to animals? How many humans are you willing to sacrifice? How many children are you willing to kill to save how many dogs?
Oh, me personally, I would have a hierarchy. So what KOE was talking about before, that life.
You said you'd have a hierarchy. So how many children for how many dogs?
No amount of children for no amount of dogs.
Ah.
I'm kind of like more of a humanist than like I would be a sentientist, and yeah, that would be my personal hierarchy.
Right. So human
But I think
human
for
values and
for
human
people
happiness
who are
would
going down
always
the other.
supersede animal values and animal happiness, right? And so the question here
That's
is, so you're not willing to sacrifice one human for the entirety of all dogs on Earth if we could prove that it wouldn't like cause harm to humans because like their pets disappeared.
No, but
etc.
then I would say that that's unnecessary. Like it is not necessary for that one person to get so much happiness from the destruction of all dogs.
Well, I mean,
Like it's
Well,
kind
if
of
I
like
may,
it's kind of like, okay, well,
Okay.
Hitler would have been happy with the eradication of all Jews, and if we took the hierarchy that Jews were below Aryans, then would you make that sacrifice in order to make one person named Hitler happy?
well, I would reject the framework that there's a hierarchy of humans.
And that's exactly what the other people that I'm kind of like pseudo arguing for would also say, is that like they would reject that hierarchy. We would not take that utilitarian game.
So your
of-
answer
If I
is
make
you're
this
willing
real
to
quick,
accept
is
some loss of
think-
human happiness.
I think, Fabian, this is a much more useful way to ask this question. And I'm not like trying to be confrontational.
go
but I
ahead.
think this is one of those where it does kind of boil down. So rather than the way that Fabian's posing the question, I think we would all kind of agree if this was the hypothetical, you're running into a burning building and it's your good friend's house and you've got a chance to save their dog or their kid. And you only got a chance to save one. I think we would all, like, even your good friend would much more appreciate you bringing out the kid than the dog. I think we all kind of understand that, like, yeah, get the kid, and if you had to pick one, you can only pick one. I know it's a terrible hypothetical.
I think we all
but
get it. Yeah.
It happens all the fucking time. This is happening somewhere in the world right fucking now as we speak, unfortunately. And so it's not like the lifeboat scenarios of what happens if a meteor hits the earth, and kind of like these are the real fucking decisions that people have to make in our real life. I think we all recognize, yeah, you get the kid.
Well,
yeah,
I think we already got that
this,
concept.
But like this doesn't lead down to, okay, now we should be able to slaughter all all animals. Like we could also apply that scenario to the Titanic.
I think the correct answer is it depends on the human. There are plenty of humans that I'd killed in favor of my dog, right? So like, it really depends on the human. But that being
Well,
said,
like,
If Willie Picton, if it was Willie Picton versus your family
would
dog,
kill him over even an
if
annoying
if we
chihuahua,
apply
right?
that scenario and then
but
like
I
that
do-
implication to the
Sorry,
one
Titanic,
second.
okay, then like women and children are
we
therefore like
gotta.
what?
Sorry, 1 second. Doopy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I need to get going. Unfortunately, got some family stuff that came up. But yeah, I might be around later. It was a nice talk.
Okay.
See you around, Doobie.
Yeah. Be safe, buddy. Hopefully you get
Have a good one,
back to your
Doobie.
seat. Okay. All right. And with that, we'll move on to the next topic. So we ran out of time like perfectly. Like it lined up well. All right. Anyway, everyone, if you've been enjoying this content, right? If you've been if you've been enjoying what we've been doing, which is going all around the world in terms of philosophy and all that. When we started off with dead dolphins, we went from dead dolphins to baby dicks, like human baby dicks, to Nazi Germany, to
like all good conversations.
Like all good conversations.
They always go into philosophy bros yelling at each other, talking about Nazis, talking about the Jews, and talking about baby dicks. Of course, these are you gotta sub to Prime Cayes after you sub to me, of course.
It's up to all the gentlemen here, right? They're actually all really great individuals. So be a part of the communities, guys. Hit that follow button if you haven't done so yet. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live to this all the time. Don't want you to miss out on any part of it. We have our Twitter also, where we tweet things. So check us out. Discord is where we do all our conversations, including this one. TikToks we find funny videos from the channel, and then YouTube is where you find the VODs. If you missed anything, please like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have you there. So yeah, hit that follow button now for our channel. You can also sub to channel too. That's great too. We love that as well. $5. But okay. So we are gonna go to our next topic. All right. This year, the Biden administration has proposed rules to limit the amount of nicotine in cigarettes. This comes after a proposal to ban menthol cigarettes completely, which are popular in the Black community. All of this is in the effort of limiting smoking-related deaths. Should the government be in the business of limiting people's options and enjoying a legal substance? Should people be allowed to decide for themselves what risky behavior they engage in? Or should the government protect citizens from predatory industries like big tobacco? This is like a new thing that Biden is doing, but it's like very much in line with his past behavior. I don't think this. If you had looked at his past policies pushing, you'd be surprised about this. B. Dander, thank you for the 5 hot tier 1 gift subs. That's really kind of you. Thank you for being super kind to this community and to this channel, as you always are, B. Dander. Thank you so much.
Also,
for that.
Sir Leviticus, I'm sorry. I
subs
noticed
channel,
you
gift subs
gave
once,
2
support this
gifted
channel
subs,
like
and
B.
I
Dander
like
keeps doing.
was
Thank you, B. Dander.
distracted. I appreciate it.
But yeah, so do you? This is sort of in line with what we were talking about previously, but like on domestic issues. And I was thinking of our friend Scott while writing this. I was like channeling him as to what he might say. All right, we'll start with our friend Jay Chow.
Oh, again. So nicotine is a substance that I personally view as, I guess I would describe it as evil. It is addictive, dangerously addictive, and it is harmful in that it is like typically with another product called tobacco, which then like leads to a lot of bad stuff in regards to health and a lot of like deficiencies when it comes to mental as well as physical. And so then I've kind of always viewed it as like, okay, this isn't a substance that should have been legalized and commoditized in the first place. And I would have much rather had marijuana been its replacement if people just needed to smoke something. That probably would have been the better path in human history if we could have chosen one over the other to commercialize and spread, especially when marijuana just has so many good uses, like in comparison to tobacco or nicotine. So the Biden administration taking steps in order to limit that, I think, is the right direction when it comes to public health and such. Now, like, onto the question of like, okay, but it's a legal substance. Well, then we could make it illegal. Legality is something very fickle. We could choose whether or not something is right or wrong, good or bad, legal or illegal, with a snap of legislation and things like that. And so to say like, okay, well, it's a legal substance and whatnot, I don't think is a good argument.
Okay, thank you. KOE.
Well, folks, we are at the point where we might be getting less nicotine in cigarettes, which, believe it or not, according to both our medical industrial complex and cigarette companies, is a bonus for both, because people are going to have to smoke more cigarettes to get the same amount of buzz, and that's going to mean more cigarette smoke in more people's lungs. So the medical industry also benefits from that. So it's a twofer. It's a twofer for Biden's donors there. So I got to say, though, that between this, the menthol cigarettes potentially disappearing, and then Trump signing the 21-year age limit for cigarettes. Folks, this is what happens when you have two teetotaling presidents in a row. All right, for you kids, what teetotalers are the old school version of straight edge. Okay, they're like, I don't drink. They were the part of the temperance movement way back in the day. And Trump and Biden are like the fucking victory of the temperance movement. Okay, neither of them drink, neither of them smoke. And now what do you know? We've got 21-year-old age limits for cigarettes now, which I oppose on a couple of different reasons, because we have the oldest children in the fucking world in this country now, okay? It's fascinating now that when you turn 18, you can go to war, you can vote, and you can pay taxes, but you gotta wait till you're 21 till you can buy cigarettes, booze, or buy a gun now in some states. So you notice that all the things that advance with the powers that be want, you can do the minute you hit the age of majority. But anything that might serve you personally, we better hold that off till you're 21 there. So that's one thing I just wanted to keep in mind. And also, when it comes to smoking, folks, this is just something I want you to keep in mind. All of you within the sound of my voice, every last one of you, everyone here within the sound of my voice, you are eventually going to die. It is going to happen to you. You are not going to jog and sit up your way into immortality. It's not going to happen. You're going to die of something. It might have something to do with your decisions. It might not. You don't know. And so let me ask you something. If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, I bet one of the last thoughts that go like, shit, I should have ate some more tacos, smoked some more cigars, and fucked a few more bitches. That might be, I bet that's going to be some of y'all's last thoughts, okay? So that's just a thing to keep in mind. Me, I'm going to get out of this life using every fucking piece to its maximum, and I'm just going to get out of this life peeling in sideways and my body, the car of my body, falling apart right then immediately. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, KOE, when you get hit by that truck, you're going to be happy.
Well, yeah, I had plenty of tacos and cigars and fucked a few extra bitches. I mean, come on, like that's life. So, but now I also wanted to push back on something. Jay Chow, you're talking about like, well, maybe we should make it legal, maybe we shouldn't. That is so. Just real quick. That is something that, because of some of the Supreme Court decisions, that might be left to the states. We could have states that just make tobacco illegal in the entire state now. We're much closer to the laboratory of democracy than our founders actually intended than I ever thought we would. Whether we like or hate these decisions, now a lot of shit like weed's now left to the states, abortion's left to the states, and if you want tobacco now, if you want to make it illegal. And with that, I yield.
My liberal utopia.
Thank you so much. And KOE, right? KOE is a man of many skills, right? And he has done the impossible. He has raised Biden my esteem, right? Biden, also a person who doesn't drink or smoke. I didn't realize about him at all. All right, so now I have a little bit more love for that fucking liberal. Thank you.
I do presidential birthday toasts for every president on my YouTube, and I can't think of anything for Biden. He doesn't drink or like anything, so fuck.
Eat a nice steak. All right, let's go to or I'm gonna go to my man Fanatic first, actually, and then finish up with Scott. Fanatic, please.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to respect this very much. Specifically, like I think the whole like idea of like changing the legal age of smoking cigarettes to 21 doesn't do anything. It's such a stupid thing, but it only works on small-brained, uninformed idiots, because the average age of people to start smoking cigarettes is 13 years old. Like the percentage of smokers who started at the age of 18 is like less than like 5% of smokers, right? Because their whole goal is to start kids on cigarettes, and then those kids become adults and continue to smoke cigarettes. So this doesn't really do much. And it seemed like this happened like right after they were like all of the like backlash where people were like actually in favor of them banning like Juul cigarettes, like the e-cigs, which is absolutely insane to me. Because it's like, well, we obviously know that people are going to choose to do nicotine. If we're going to do something to ban those things, talking about we got to get rid of the flavored ones because the kids are going to get hooked on this stuff. When we don't realize that kids are the ones that are getting hooked on cigarettes. This generation of kids now, it's the least amount of smokers that has existed since like cigarettes have been pretty much introduced into society. So like the idea that like we're really trying to fight for the kids here, that can't be the actual issue, because these vape things actually did help people not to get like super attracted to cigarettes and things like that. Do I think menthols are absolutely like particularly gross? Yeah, they have been. They were specifically aimed at Black folks. That's who they've been targeted for a very long time. They do something specific, that is that they coat the throat so that, or they numb the throat so that like you can't feel the pain like from the cigarettes, which makes people a lot more likely to smoke them. Seems pretty nefarious to me, but I mean, what can you expect? People hate niggas. So I think, yeah, getting rid of menthol cigarettes, maybe that might actually be the way to go. And then maybe you can save some more of my folks, just like this abortion did. I don't know. I don't use it to respect Biden, but I do think it's a good thing.
Okay. Oh, that was interesting ending. Okay. We'll get back to that. Let's go to our friend Scott. Scott, like this one's for you, buddy. All right. Cheers to you. So go ahead, please.
Short answer, no. Let people do whatever they want with their bodies. Long answer, I think Biden, in his dementia-addled brain, had a somewhat lucid moment for just a second. The dementia was still eating away at the myelin sheath in his brain, and the neurons weren't quite firing right. And so he thought he was in 1993 and that he was drafting the 94 crime bill, and he forgot to add in a ban on menthol cigarettes and a ban on nicotine levels, and just use this old junk science to interject dumb shit into law. And this is a great example of why government's so fucking stupid. So first and foremost, nicotine as a compound by itself, that's not an additive in most cigarettes, but is instead just inherent to the tobacco leaf, is not negative. There's no research to show that nicotine is bad. Nicotine helps reduce body weight. It's a protective factor against Parkinson's disease, Tourette's syndrome, Alzheimer's, sleep apnea, ulcerative colitis. Like, it's extremely addictive, and that's why certain things love to have nicotine in them. That's why vapes have the nicotine in them, because people are addicted to the nicotine from cigarettes. But what kills you is not the fucking nicotine. There's I think one study that seems to show that FOX1M nicotine compound might help cancer cells grow faster, and that might be bad, right? And obviously it's tied to things that are regularly massive carcinogens like cigarettes, but that's the tar, that's the smoke, and that's all the other chemical additives that they add to cigarettes, including the preservatives. So a nicotine ban is going to cause people to smoke more cigarettes, like KOE said, and it's also going to do things like outlaw certain cigarettes that have larger amounts of nicotine in them, but have less chemical preservatives in them. Things like American Spirits, right? That, American Spirit has their own issues in Florida and the way that they've been sued, and maybe some of the lies they've told and fraud they've done with chemical preservatives. But regardless, what this is going to do is it's not going to stop people smoking cigarettes. It's just going to make people smoke more cigarettes and get more carcinogens in them and less of the nicotine. And the nicotine, while it be addictive, they're just going to smoke more to get that nicotine fix. It seems like it's a part of a corporate lobbied interest to sell more cigarettes and to, of course, and also to attack the vaping industry, because vaping does not have the tar, does not have, we don't know what the long-term side effects are, but of course we have, these things like popcorn lung and shit like that. And almost every time that they find out about it, it's been black market Chinese products that were manufactured for THC and not for fucking people that are vaping nicotine. And so the fact of the matter is that nicotine's not fucking bad for you unless you're counting the addictive property of it and what it's attached to. And being addicted to those things can be bad for you. So this is just bad government and stupid policies that aren't going to have the desired effect, unless, of course, the desired effect is attacking the vaping industry and making tobacco companies more money, which, you know, I tend to think might actually be the fucking desired effect from our corporatist, corrupt government that works with corporations to poison and kill people on the daily.
This is Scott in his happy place. Fanatic, I'm on the CDC website, and I've two different articles in CDC say that tobacco use has increased among the youth, and that it's driven by the e-cigarette revolution there. Like I can send these.
Be right back. I'm gonna get some water.
Sure. But like it says like it's been on, and that's what I've been hearing as well. That like because of the explosion of e-cigarettes, the use of tobacco-related products has risen immediately. I'll send those to you. Okay.
Yeah,
still
so
down?
I think like when it comes to cigarettes, then the youth don't smoke as much. But then as you mentioned just now, e-cigarettes have become really popular amongst the youth, and so then that's kind of just become a substitute, a replacement for that statistic. So when it comes to like nicotine addiction or tobacco addiction, whether or not it's in e-cigarettes or not, blah blah blah, it's still a problem that like we have people who are addicted to this. And I kind of want to push back against this notion that people are just going to smoke more because of a decrease in nicotine. I'd be really curious to see if there's actual like a trend of this. I mean, like I guess the ban just, or like the law just, whatever act just passed, and so then we'll have to kind of wait and see. But something that I think suggests otherwise is whenever the prices of cigarettes like increased, we did see a drop in sales. Because like people, even though they were addicted, they're kind of just like, okay, it's not worth it to pay these exorbitant prices in order to maintain this addiction. It's just not worth it anymore. So then like there's another option of like not just smoking more, but just outright quitting. And that's probably like a desired effect of this law. And the other thing is like, yeah, when it comes to people who are already addicted, that might be the case that they start smoking more. But then you also have to consider the benefit of, okay, well, now there's going to be less nicotine in these products. Maybe there's going to be less new addictions from people who are going to be starting using these products early on.
So I'll add some context to that, right? I'll be quick. Or KOE wants to jump in.
I'm going to be real
go
quick
in.
here,
I'm sorry.
Kind of an anecdote. When I was in college, I actually was a gas station attendant for a short amount of time. Just, you know, job, and it was an interesting experience, and I got to learn a lot about people. But also, whenever people would say, keep the change, me and the other whoever was there, we'd leave it in a little pile and we'd gamble. And how we'd gamble is when people are coming up, okay, what kind of cigarettes are they going to buy? And I got pretty good, but like I had about a 60-70% ratio by the time it got to, you know, nobody's right 100% of the time, but like
the origin story of your racism. Got it.
Well, no, it was Jesus Christ. No, sometimes you'd be dead fucking wrong. Trust me. Like some folks, like cigarettes are like, again, it's something that people put in their own body, and it's a very personal, intimate thing. And you'd be shocked what, you know, folks really want. And then you get to know them and you talk to them, and like, yeah, like I remember one time there was this tiny little, like, you know, she just turned 18 and she wanted fucking Winston 100s. I'm like, motherfuck, oh my. So like what I'm getting at here is, you know, at the store that I worked at, you could also buy alcohol of all kinds of different strengths. This is 45.2% alcohol by volume. Beer is a lot cheaper, or a lot lower, and you can buy both of them at the store. Yet now, under Biden's regulation, you can't even decide how much nicotine you're going to have in your own cigarette. Like, I'm sorry. At one point, like, you as the personal consumer, you do get a choice. This is a luxury item, to be frank. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. And yes, we all understand, like, we all know it's not fucking good for you. Let me just say that fucking clearly. So anybody in the mic, they are not good for you. And you already know that. And that's what I kind of bring up is, you know, we're not to the point where technology can keep us alive forever yet. Sorry, kids. We're just not there. So enjoy this life while you can. Get what you can while you can, and enjoy it. So, why
does he always try and be like this inspirational
story about like, yes, it's a luxury item, but especially for poor folks. When you raise the price, you have no idea how fucking hard that impacts people. Because I was in a really bad neighborhood for a while,
So-
and I saw like people went for the wild horses because that was a shit that got swept up off the fucking factory floor at the end of the night, and they'd make a pack of cigarettes out of that, and it was $1.04.
Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
And so yeah, that was what folks who were in these hard up neighborhoods, that's what they'd smoke, is shit like that. And so like, yeah, when you raise the prices, they're addicted. They're not gonna fucking quit. They're just gonna change what they smoke.
Well, okay, so I just want to say, first of all, the Winston 100s were obviously for a 50-year-old sugar daddy first. So the problem is that you thought she was buying the cigarettes for herself. Second of all, yeah, so obviously if you raise the price, right, morality laws work to a certain extent. They just don't get rid of the problem, right? That's the real issue here, is that like, yes, some percentage of people will quit smoking. Because if you reduce the nicotine levels and thus require them to smoke more cigarettes to get the same nicotine high, right? Some people will quit smoking because because they're priced out, right? The thing you have to recognize though is that goes part to your idea that nicotine is an evil substance. Despite it having positive effects, it is extremely addictive, and it's tied. Well, I'm not talking to you, KOE.
I agree with your analysis.
Jay Chow said that it was an evil substance. And I'm agreeing to that portion. It's extremely addictive, right? In terms of physical addiction, there's not a lot of substances on earth that are more physically addictive that we see in any wide use, right? Like there's an argument about heroin, opioids, right? And like whether or not they're worse, but you know, obviously they're more destructive. But yeah, so yeah, some people will do that. But the problem with that is because it's so addictive, reducing the amount of nicotine in cigarettes is not going to stop new addicts, because that's enough to hook them. Half of it, 10% of it, 5% of it, it's enough to hook them, because it's not a matter of like parts per billion in terms of the addiction. It's once you start using, you build a tolerance, you get more, the draw is already there. But it may price some people out and they may choose to stop smoking cigarettes. And if that's like your whole goal in the law, you know, I would say that that's arbitrary, that's violent, and that's against freedom and liberty. But like it would still probably be effective to that degree if you wanted to do a utilitarian calculus and say if it saves one person from cancer, etc. The problem is what are the other effects? Because the other effects are what's really interesting here when you're trying to do a utilitarian calculus. This is why it's so difficult to have that as a morality system, because you don't know how many people are so addicted to cigarettes and buy more cigarettes that they choose to not pay other bills. You don't know how much reduction in child support payments not being paid are going to exist because of this. How many people, maybe get a little bit behind on their rent because that addiction is so important to them. What are the butterfly effects of this? And the other thing is what does this do to the vaping industry? And is this designed just to make big tobacco more money by selling more cigarettes, which allows them to advertise in more spaces, which allows them to get more people addicted to cigarettes? And that's the problem with doing this utilitarian calculus on this, is that you're doing guesswork and bullshit to say that, to use the metrics that you want to use to determine that this will be a good thing, but you don't fucking know what the unintended consequences of that are. And that's why, I would say you should just come over to my camp and believe in Rothbardian libertarian philosophy, and you'll know what's descriptively illegal and illegal.
So just to be clear, the first thing that I read on the subject, it said that smoking had declined in adults from 29% to 20.9%, nearly 21 of every 100 adults in 2005, to 12.5%, nearly 13 of every 100 adults in 2020. So it like declined about 20%. And then smoking rates, according to
I love that name.
.org, it says youth smoking dropped to an all-time low of 2.3% to an all-time low of 2.3% in 2021, down from nearly 23% in 2000. So it has absolutely insanely declined, even as of 2021. It's tobacco usage and smoking have just been like sharply declining, and their whole aim has been children. So I feel like when we start like talking about these new laws and things that they're doing, I do look at everything like scared, because we know how much the tobacco industry has been able to successfully lobby in this country. The fact that they're even allowed, when we know how destructive and toxic that they are, and we can look at the direct deaths, the fact that they've still been allowed is just because of their lobbying power. Because Congress should have banned cigarettes quite a long time ago. If we were going to be looking at like things like marijuana and banning that, the idea that we would allow cigarettes when we know that those things are insanely way more harmful is just absolutely crazy. And so it scares me because it seems like tobacco knows that like at this point, like they're on the way out. Like everyone is declining declining the usage, and if you can get the youth down to be to 2.3%, that's your product. Because that means that you have a short life. Because again, like the vast majority of people that start smoking cigarettes start in their youth. I think like over 50%. I think the average age to begin smoking in the United States was like 13 years old. So if you can't get them niggas to smoke, adults aren't making a decision. Anytime I hear of a grown adult that decided to start smoking cigarettes, I immediately think, one, you're a sheep and you're not a person to me, because you have to be some kind of idiot to have that sort of information and start as an adult.
Fanatic. Do you think
That's a
do you
different
think
kind of
do you think the studies that you guys are looking at are capturing different things? Because I think that's what's going on here. Because I think you have three things here, right? You have vaping, which some people might count. You have smoking other things like marijuana, for example, and then you have smoking and tobacco usage specifically. I think what you're showing is that the data does, at least from what I've looked at, the data does show that tobacco usage has gone down massively, but vaping has gone up obviously massively because it didn't fucking exist in 2000, not really. And also marijuana usage has gone up to a certain degree, which is going to cause cancer rates because, you know, smoking marijuana, unless you're doing dabs or something, you're getting tar and a lot of carcinogens.
They do break out,
and even
smoking
dabs a
and
little bit.
vaping,
Yeah,
and the
keep
thing
going. If you keep reading down, it eventually says smoking and vaping among young people declines in 2021 as well.
Okay,
The
fair
same
enough.
approach that has successfully helped bring down the teen smoking rate to historic lows is also starting to make a difference in the youth vaping epidemic. According to MTF, vaping nicotine amongst teens also dropped in 2021 to 13.3% from its 2019 peak of 18.1%, showing progress in the fight of curb youth nicotine vaping and signaling the effect to provide education to prevent e-cigarette use and quitting resources are starting to work. Yeah. So it's both of them are like crazily.
Well, I just meant the massive disparity in the numbers. I think you guys were looking at two totally different things.
One exception is Nebraska. We still have the highest rate of smoking in the United States. Last I looked, it's kind of crazy. It's one of the few places where there's still places you can smoke.
Is that why your town only has a population of 50,000 because they all died from cancer?
Yikes.
Oh shit, my village
What's
is
the
like
life expectancy
350.
of Nebraska compared to other states?
And guys, you got nothing to fucking do there, right? It's Nebraska. Let's go.
Drink and farm. That's it.
But I'm actually okay. So all right. So I have mixed feelings about this. So like, you know, I got those social libertarian vibes where, you know, I want people to be able to do what they want with their bodies, right? Like I've even talked about people being able to, you know, end their lives, right? So I'm for people being able to do whatever, and like the government not telling them what to do in terms of like substances we currently count as illegal, you know, right? If you want to hurt yourself, that's fine. However, when it comes to big tobacco, like it is a predatory industry targeting individuals, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is that like I'm fine with people making their own choices, but I can recognize when those choices are being influenced. And big tobacco is a industry of billions of dollars, right? Using its influence in any way they can to get people hooked on their dangerous product. And that's the thing that I have a problem with, right?
Prime, no.
Like I'd have a problem with big cocaine as well if big cocaine was the thing. Well, I guess it is.
It was.
But like
November, vote yes on medical cocaine.
No.
Yeah.
No. There's a distinction here.
Like a joke.
There's a
Hear it.
distinction here you're not making that's really important, right? There's
Okay.
nothing wrong with corporations targeting people with marketing, no matter what. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is two things: regulatory capture and fraud. And the tobacco industry is rife with both of these. When the tobacco industry uses its money and its power and its wealth to buy off politicians to write the laws in such a way that they favor them, much like this nicotine ban that I guarantee you is going to be used to go after vaping and to shore up their own profits, right? And the other one is fraud. The tobacco industry puts all kinds of additional addictive substances, and they do not properly market or tell people what those things are, and they market them as if they're not adding all of these things in. And so and when you can make the argument that because people are addicted, right, that it does meet the definition of fraud because they don't have the capacity to go out and inform themselves from other things, because many of these chemicals that they add are actually proprietary things that people cannot research themselves. They can't understand the chemical compounds. It's not reasonable for them to assume that. And they're already addicted, so they're going to buy these things. So the tobacco industry commits fraud and uses the government to write regulation in such a way that it protects their industry in favor of other industries. That's the problem. I don't think you'd have a problem with IKEA fucking targeting fucking new college students and being like, hey, we got cheap furniture, we got the best, even though, you know, mainframe or mainways or mainstays, whatever the Walmart brand is, might be slightly better for them and cheaper. You wouldn't be like IKEA's exploiting young college students to buy their cheap furniture. It's the fraud and using the government power.
No. But you know, my obvious answer is that those two things aren't the same, right? When we're talking about the effects on the population, right? And again, it's okay for the population to want to hurt themselves, right? That's okay. But to push that on, like a company making a profit off of other people's pain is the problem for me.
Yeah,
right?
but you don't
And
understand.
then-
IKEA
and
is
that-
making a profit off of other people's pain because they make cheap furniture that's not that strong. And with the growing obesity epidemic in America, so many fat people are breaking this furniture and they're in physical pain. And they didn't know because IKEA did this to them.
Oh my God. All right, look. So, like, here's my problem with. So we're focusing on the nicotine aspect, the nicotine level aspect, which is the newest thing the Biden administration doing. But the thing before that, right, was putting a proposal to ban menthol cigarettes. The menthol cigarettes are very popular in the Black community. Why?
Yeah,
are they
that shit was
popular in
just
the Black
racist.
community?
That was just shit was just racist.
Why are they popular in the Black community? Because the Big Tobacco specifically made a campaign to target Black people with menthol cigarettes.
And then they put
made it for them-
fiberglass. Then they put fiberglass in them until like the late 90s.
And in
Yeah.
chew.
It's disgusting, right? And so this is my problem. This is the dilemma that I'm balancing here. A person's own right to manage your own body, right? Manage your own affairs, and protection from industries that would do them harm simply for their own profit. And that's the thing I absolutely cannot stand.
No, just get rid of the fraud. Just get rid of the fraud.
But it's not. So if the company was absolutely honest about what was in their product, right? Like in other countries, you see like they have different cigarette packages, right? In which like you buy a pack of cigarettes and it shows like someone's blackened lungs, a deceased person's blackened lungs, right? It shows you like gory things that result in cigarette smoke, right? It's not just like the Surgeon General thing that we have, right? Which some people literally don't read. There's some people who've gone years and literally have never read it and still don't know, right? Like it's amazing, right? So to bypass that in other countries, and you can look it up online. This is just
I think
look up
France
the cigarette
started it
packages.
with like dead
Yeah.
babies and shit, like it's like and
like,
skull and crossbones, and people they tried the skull and crossbones first, and people were like, the skull and crossbones is badass, and it didn't work, and they were like, okay, we got to scrap the skull and crossbones.
Dead
Yeah,
babies
yeah.
instead.
And if you like New Zealand, I think does this, and I think maybe Australia as well. But like other places, they do this, right? They have this on the package, and so you cannot like skip that, right? You're gonna see this thing, you're gonna have to ask questions, but then you can make the decision that you're still gonna do it, and that's your business, right? But like if we were perfectly honest as to if the cigarette companies are perfectly honest, I still doesn't for me forgive them for their predatory behavior and targeting other and targeting these communities, right?
So you want
so-
revenge? They wronged you in the past, and you want restitution. That's the thing.
Well,
You think the big tobacco owes the black community reparations for their
That's
illicit
not what
marketing
I'm
of
hearing
menthol?
at all.
I hadn't thought about that, but yes.
You know
Oh my
what?
God.
Yeah.
I would be okay with victims of people
Because this
suing for
motherfucker's
fraud
dead.
if they could prove the fraud in the way that the targeting was done and lying against big
It-
tobacco.
I think sometimes you don't have to prove like a direct fraud. I would say that like just like if you can see that like this has been their marketing aim and it was something that was nefarious and we can like tie it to some specific harm, whatever, like and they were aiming it at children and things like that. Yeah, I think you could probably like
Yeah, I would just argue that the fraud is what made it nefarious, right? Like their ability to
It's
lie
not-
about the product and lie about the
It's-
damages that it was doing is what made their marketing so evil. If they marketed, but it was obvious and everyone knew all the chemical compounds and knew how horrible it was from the beginning, it might be a
It's
different
not just-
story.
No, well,
To
I
me,
I
it's
think
not
what
just
is
a-
nefarious
it's not
is
just
most
a-
nefarious
let-
about
let-
it.
let the Mac respond.
And it was
Yeah,
weird. and hippies.
it's not just the fraud. I think like if you can say again, it didn't have to be fraud. It can be like directly on its face. Like hey, like again, like we already have Surgeon General warnings on these like products that say basically, hey, like just so you know, you're about to cuck yourself. That didn't change anything. Like I would say that if you're aiming it at children and then saying, well, the 13-year-old should have looked at that Surgeon General warning and known what it was actually doing. Like I think like I don't think that that's required. I think we could
Would
just
you
say,
make
like,
the would you make the same argument against Minute Maid and getting children addicted to sugar? And that we should sue and we should regulate and make it to where children can't drink apple juice?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
And
not
I would say
apple
that
juice.
Obviously,
Apple juice is
obviously,
fine.
we can
Orange
see
juice.
like when it starts coming to like food and things like that. More often than not, children are going to be like fed these things by their parents, right? Like they're not. And I would say that in a lot of these situations, like sugar, while it's addictive, is not as directly harmful as something like nicotine.
I don't know, man. Heart disease is, pretty big contributing factor of it's the number one cause of death. Some of it from smoking cigarettes for sure, but most of it from obesity.
Hey,
If
Sugar
you're
tax is a
addicted
real
to
policy
sugar
that
as a
we
culture.
should consider.
Yeah,
Like
I don't know.
if
I
you
just
view
don't think
like
it's comparable.
if you think like if we crack down on nicotine so much that we ought to be cracking down on sugar, a sugar tax is a policy that is really well, yeah, we could really consider that.
Right. We follow
but
this
it's
logic through to
hyper-addictive.
conclusion, and what you see is that more and more you encroach upon people's freedom, and more you fuck over poor people, and more you don't deal with the actual issue, which is fraud and regulatory capture. Because
So, Jay Chow-
that
Oh God, he's gonna keep going down
Calculus.
this fraud thing, which nobody's
Yeah.
really trying to engage with. But that thing that you're talking about, the sugar tax, is actually crazily effective. So they did it specifically in Berkeley. I think they just like put a tax on sugary drinks. And all it cost was like 10 cents more or 15 cents more. And like in the specific region where like they had did that tax, like the sugary drink consumption dropped by like 50%. It was
Yeah.
insane. So like those things are incredibly effective, and I don't see why we don't do those things in America, especially where
Yeah.
like
What
we're not
ends
in
up
some of these
happening is like
depressing
people
Western
just
Pollution is making food more expensive.
well,
It's
here's the
not good,
thing.
like,
it's-
Yeah.
it's
that-
really
you don't
bad
you don't
for a
you don't buy it,
certain
okay?
segment
And that's
of
how
the
you.
population, folks.
No, it wouldn't. In fact, it would actually be incredibly helpful for that specific segment of the population if that specific segment of the population tends to
Let
have
them
like
eat
a high,
If they're no longer consuming.
if that specific segment of the population happens to have like a higher representation of things like obesity or heart disease or any of those kinds of things, and it seems like putting on this tax that would actually discourage them because those people have to make more they have to be more mindful of what they're doing with their money. Then in those cases it seems like you would actually be doing them a service because you'd be keeping them from some of that sugar, because now since it's more expensive, then they know that it's going to actually directly impact their pockets.
this is the Marcusianism sneaking in, that you can regulate people's behavior for the betterment of themselves. We can
Yes, you
force
can.
people to behave the way the state wants them to behave for their own good.
Absolutely.
Save
And,
us
and,
from
and,
ourselves.
and labeling it
Not
does
sugar.
nothing to
Yeah.
detract from the fact that it was proven in a study to be effective and it would save their lives. Absolutely. So if you want to call it Marcusian, I don't give a fat flying. I think it's effective. It makes all the sense in the world. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen to people's benefits. So yeah, I'm for it. Pick it.
I'd call it evil. That's a simple way
Okay,
to do
sure.
it.
Well,
Label it
I
however
would
freak
call
you want to.
nicotine evil
Sounds great.
because of how addictive it is. So then, like, I think from the topic before and even to this topic, we like to talk about this idea of consent, and when it comes to like making our choices for ourselves and what we want to consume. But then when it comes to an addiction, well, once you're addicted, then I would say that it's very hard to say that you're making your own choice in order to continue that product, because what's really driving that isn't really a choice of like mind, but more so a substance has influenced your brain chemicals or whatnot in order to want to. I have plenty of friends who, if they had the choice, would not want to vape. They wouldn't want to smoke because like they know it's bad for themselves, but they continue to do so because it's a craving, it feels good, it might deal with depression, it might deal with anxiety and things like that. And it just really sucks that like there's a substance such as nicotine that like just by the fact that it is addictive, I think completely breaks away this idea of informed consent. And so then when it comes to the question, this big question of, are people able to like be responsible for their own bodies? Well, I think it's like a yes or a no. I think we ought to be able to make choices for ourselves. But then when it comes to like, I think very obvious things that people shouldn't be able to do, then we ought to have regulation in order to either prevent it or de-incentivize it. And I think the path right now for a lot of countries and the United States is we're going to continue to de-incentivize it as much as possible until we finally are able to phase it out. Because if we were to just outright ban it, which I wouldn't support for practical reasons, it'll kind of just be like prohibition, where all of a sudden you have people who still want alcohol in order, they'll start doing bootleg, they'll start making moonshine and whatnot. Like, you're not solving the problem. And so then like I think there's kind of like this conspiracy idea of like it's big tobacco that is pushing this action. I wouldn't be able to know that. There's a lot of, as Fabian Liberty said, unintended consequences that might happen in the future that might change my mind as to whether or not this is a good or bad policy. But as for right now, on the face value, I'm in support of this, and I think it is a step, another step to towards the goal of we are no longer going to be using tobacco products ever.
So the problem is that this is a Trojan horse sugar tax, right? And what do I mean by that is that we know that sugar taxes disproportionately affect the poor, right? We know that it is a regressive tax because the wealthy don't actually care and they're not affected because the relative income doesn't matter. But the poor, you know, when faced with a sugar tax, they have to make new choices, right? The government is forcing them to buy apples. The government is forcing them to, you know, cook more of their food instead of buying prepackaged food. And you may say that that's okay, right? Or they just pay the tax and then they have less relative income. So it leads to, you know, taxation against the poor in such a way of increasing income inequality and wealth disparity and things like that. And so what they realize is they don't want to do that because those were really unpopular because a lot of people didn't like that. So what they did instead is they Trojan horse it in by saying, well, we're just going to require that the nicotine levels be reduced. And so what that will do is that the wealthy will just, or in the middle class, or people that have enough money to buy as much cigarettes as they fucking want, will just buy more cigarettes. And the people that are struggling, right, they might quit because they're priced out, right? So like we should talk about like that as it is, right? Which is that what you're deciding to do is saying, I don't know what the unintended consequences of taxing poor people. And I would say, you know, from my position, taxation is theft no matter what. But I would say, do you really want to institute a regressive tax against poor people as a means of supposedly fixing this problem?
Not supposedly. Again, when you've already done studies on these things and we've seen the outcome and we've seen what they've done, and we obviously can like look and see that there's a higher like coincidence of like heart disease, coronary heart disease, and high blood pressure, aka hypertension, and diabetes within the poor community because of their access to these things and less access to things that would help them to regulate these things. And it sounds like, yeah, maybe this might be that might be the wave. Let's go ahead and find some way of getting rid of those things, like helping people to do that. And I think it would be effective. Like, you can try your best to load the language as much as you want to try to say, well, it would hurt them because it would be harmful and it's a tax and it's regressive, and use whatever charged words you want to. But at the end of the day, it really just amounts to you'd be adding a tax, and obviously people make decisions with their dollars, and this decision would literally save their lives, as it would like disable, I mean, as it would help them to like stop consuming this thing which is killing them and harmful for them. Sounds like a bet to me.
I won't use charged language. I'll just attack those arguments. Dude, like I got like he's saying what I'm wrong, and he's fucking. You're not. No
seconds here.
No,
because like
Okay, go ahead.
Addiction, folks, it seems like it's a horrible thing, and we have to save people from themselves. Here it comes again. Here it comes. Now, see, that might have looked like a choice, but no. Don't be deceived, folks. It's an addiction that people are helpless to fucking do. Like, yeah, the turning of the wrist is a personal choice. Smoking something is a personal choice. So that's all I wanted. Fabian?
Come on,
Right.
KOE.
You
That's,
said-
that's so disingenuous. Like, there are actual alcoholics.
That might have looked like... I know, what I did might have looked like a choice,
They can't really
apparently,
control
but
their
it
own
wasn't,
usage of
apparently.
alcohol.
I know.
Well,
Like,
so-
I think it was
So you're
very
saying that wasn't a
obvious from your
choice that I just made.
gesture.
Here it comes again.
Are you an alcoholic?
You might be.
No, actually, this is the first I've drank in 10 days.
Damn,
It's been
counting. He's counting.
What a show.
He's counting the days, which means he's already down that path.
Well,
But no,
I had my daughter
Scott.
for summer vacation. It was
But
great.
real quick,
So-
Fanatic, you
Thanks for
said
the comedy skit.
you challenge my language, and you say that I'm wrong because you say that you have proof that it will solve the problem. Well, first of all, you have historical analysis. You don't have proof. Second, right, you have a probabilistic opinion based off of the data. Second of all, you say, when I say the problem, right, the word the problem is doing a lot of work here, right? Because when I say the problem, I'm talking about getting rid of the addiction full stop, full scale, which is what Jay Chow was talking about. Now, you may look at the problem as any individual stops smoking, then the problem has been solved. The other thing is that like you just dismiss with the entirety of unintended consequences and say that I'm just being like, that I'm just pushing charged language. And I would say that no, like, I think that's bullshit. Like, we don't know what the unintended consequences are of additional regressive taxes. And I don't think, if you want me to use a different term for a tax that disproportionately affects the poor, like, I'll use a different term. But, like, I just don't see your argument there at all. You're making the assertion that this will work. And
I got you.
You don't
Hey.
have that fact.
Good. Say it. So go ahead and repeat your argument, or your counter argument, and do it in as charitable a way and with as soft language as possible. Go ahead and do that. I'm giving you the floor. Please do that. Say it as sweetly and as softly as possible. And let me make sure I understand you. Maybe
I'm not here to dance for you, Fanatic. Like,
Yeah,
either you can answer it or you
Y'all
can
heard
not
that.
answer
All right,
it.
it's good. No, you're fine. Never mind. I got you.
That's
You've been
the
engaging
weirdest
with me
request
greatly.
I've ever heard in a debate
Yeah.
ever.
Well, I thought Scott kind of volunteered to do that. No.
I don't
No,
remember.
apparently.
No?
We will have to get
No,
to the
when he
court
said I
stenographers on that
could
one.
do this, I guess so. It speaks to his ability, but whether or not he actually wants to. Well, I think like to speak on more about on the unintended consequences. When it comes to policy making, there's always going to be unintended consequences because
Facts.
I don't know if it was what you said. Like we don't have like a magic crystal ball that tells us like what are the real effects of anything that we're going to be doing. Policy making is something that is more of trial and error than like really anything else. And of course, when it comes to policy making, it's best to have as much information as possible, as much evidence as possible in order to make sure that we're not just like throwing darts in the dark, right? Like we're not just trying to find a needle in a haystack. We could be informed of what to do in terms of our actions. And I think like when it comes to this policy, it's going in that direction now. Like again, I'll reiterate, of course, unintended consequences are very real. If there's something that happens because of this that I don't like, then I'm bound to change my mind on this policy. But as for now, I'm sticking with it. This is good. I don't see any evidence to suggest that like all of a sudden people are going to be using or like smoking more because of less nicotine. If anything, all the evidence that does suggest is that there's going to be a decrease whenever there's going to be more regulation and whatnot. And then like to speak on the tax and like the regressive stuff, I mean like saving poor people and doing harm onto rich people, there's a group of people out there who are really into that stuff. So I don't know if this is like the right argument.
That's a good quip.
You want.
It's a good quip. I'll just say, yeah, I agree with the first half of everything you said, right? But the problem is you don't know, and because you don't know, you shouldn't be using coercion to try and force people into behavior off of a desired outcome that you don't even know you will actually achieve. This is the problem with consequentialism.
I don't think that coercion is bad, though. Like that's just the nature of government. The government is inherently coercive. Now,
if
like whether or
coercion's
that-
not bad, if coercion's not bad, then maybe I should engage in some physical violence against you to force you to do what I want you to do.
Well, see, that's another thing, is that like there's a difference between coercion and violence. So then, like, when the government coerces me with, hey, if you were to break this law, there's jail time, there's prison time, there are fines, there's death penalty and whatnot. That's coercion right there. That's a threat towards an action that limits me on what I could do. But the reason why that happens is because, well, if it doesn't, then it's kind of like anarchy. Well, then again, maybe you'll like that.
He does.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree there.
Go ahead and try and fight the state on this. Engage in a black market and then refuse to pay those fines that they want to take from you, that you made with the sweat of your brow, presumably. And you'll find out that every tax, every law, if it's not backed up by the threat of violence, is merely a suggestion, and that these taxes and that these laws are absolutely backed up by the threat of violence.
Yeah,
That's
of
what
course.
differentiates
I mean, like,
the
but
state
that's
from
the
every
threat
other
of
organization is its
yeah,
monopoly
okay.
on violence generally.
I guess, like, yeah, that, but then I wouldn't call that necessarily like violent. Not until like it truly like gets violent.
Yeah, it's only
I guess,
violent
like,
when you
when-
say no enough times, and then the violence starts.
Like when I'm thinking about violence, I'm
right.
thinking of like the really aggressive stuff of like, oh, SWAT team is gonna come knocking on my door because I have like 100% nicotine. I'm selling that out of my basement or whatnot. Like, but or like when it comes to like, oh, we're gonna give you, you're gonna have to like pay $50. Like to call that violence, I don't think it's the appropriate word. So like again, I harp back to, I guess
He's not using
you know,
charged words to call it violence.
not all coercion is violent, but I guess like all violence is coercive.
Not all violence.
I would
is
just respond again
It's
with
the
my
other way
statement,
around.
right? Like
Really.
that these laws are ultimately backed up by the threat of violence, and that if you say no long enough, you will meet that physical violence.
Yeah,
Eventually,
yeah.
yes.
I guess so. I'll go to prison.
Yeah. So
And like if I resist enough, then like I
drag
guess
you
like
off,
I'll get
force
handcuffed.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't pay your taxes, don't pay your fines, don't pay your fees. Eventually, you will end up where men will forcibly seize your property, ready to commit violence, armed, and ready to fight you if you don't give up that property that they steal from you.
Yeah, but like you make it sound like it's terrible, but I'm just like that's horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's pretty bad.
I don't want cops fucking
good.
stealing my
Yeah,
shit.
like-
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
hey,
What he
hey,
does,
hey,
this
hey.
is the Fabian rule. He says it and as charged away as possible to try to make it sound awful. But he really doesn't actually have an argument. He's just using charged words to
Yeah.
make it threatening. If he was to try to repeat this exact same phrase in a non-charged way, you would see that it's basically just it's nothing. It's what's the word? He's just misrepresenting everything you're saying by restating it.
Hyperbolic?
Fanatic,
Not just hyperbolic.
constantly
Yeah, but-
not engaging with my arguments and saying they're bad arguments and then lying and slandering me about them is not actually an argument. And I think anyone with an IQ above room temperature will see through your bullshit.
Okay.
Well,
I don't
mean,
think any
what
person thinks that I'm
differentiates a
lying
state
at all,
from
and I
any
think
other
everyone can
organization, like I
recognize
said
that what I'm
earlier,
saying
is
you're
its
doing
monopoly
is
on
what you're
violence.
doing.
It doesn't
And when
have
I've
that as a
asked
state.
you, when I've given you the floor and asked you, hey, good, that's what I'm doing. If I'm wrong here, then the floor is yours. Go ahead and do so in a non-charged way, and you're unwilling to do so. We all can see it. I don't know who you think you're fooling here, buddy.
It's not charged. It's just that's what a state is. It's an organization with a
What the
monopoly
fuck
on
are you
violence.
talking-
If it doesn't
like,
have that, it's
no,
not
That's
you
one
just-
way to view it.
You
yeah.
just want to like have a position where you're controlling the conversation to your liking, and whilst you ignore other people's arguments and pivot away. And I think people see through your bullshit. Like, honestly.
Yeah, I believe you believe that. Go ahead.
So, KOE, to speak to what you just said, I've heard that plenty of times in my classrooms. The real phrase is you're missing one word. It's that the state has the monopoly over the legitimate use of violence. So then, for example, like if
You don't need that because do you consider North Korea legitimate? They still have a
No,
monopoly on
no,
violence.
no. He's right.
Like-
You need legitimate, right? Because violence can be legitimate unless you're a pacifist, right? Self-defense. You can use violence.
You
You can use self-defense.
Illegitimate regime that just had the monopoly on violence, and they were the state for the
well,
time being, whether we
within
liked it or
within
not.
North Korea and their sovereignty, they do have the legitimate use of violence. And,
I
and
would
the
still
reason why
I would
that's
still
the
accept
case-
his terminology and would just say that the state's violence isn't legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess like now we're
Initiation of
going
the use of
down
force is
on
always
the
immoral, yes.
semantics of like, how do we view legitimate, as in like, oh, are you legitimate, as in like, are you a legit country, or like the legitimate in the way that I'm using it is it backed by the rule of law, or like is it backed by I guess like some sort of social contract between the people or government, or really like whatever relationship that is between the government and the people. So like that would also include North Korea having the legitimate use of violence. They run law enforcement. They do have laws. They have I don't know, like
That's mean,
courts or something.
Victorious
Like, they
me.
have something in place in order to put people who don't follow the rules. There's some sort of a system, and so then that would be the legitimate use of violence, even for North Korea. And so like so you wouldn't say that a cartel or a gang, they have violence and they have territory, but would you consider that legitimate?
They do in
I would say the
Mexico.
United States
there
government
is
is
one
a
way.
gang.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to remember
and then you would
the
also have
Mexican
like
government was actually routed in open battle in October of 2019 when El Chapo's gang actually went up against the Mexican military, and the Mexican military is fucking routed. So they don't actually have a functioning government anymore. It's actually kind of run by the cartels there. So, like it or not, they have the monopoly on force in Mexico, and so they kind of run things, whether anybody likes it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody says no, you don't, go down there and try
yeah.
it.
So, but then like the only way they could have
got
actually
cutters,
done
they
that
cut you.
is the only way they could have done that is by having the government, the ones who are supposed to have the legitimate use of violence, to submit to them.
They
Because
did.
they've lost control.
Yeah, because they had
So
more
that's what
violence
happened.
they could inflict on them. They were saying, stop fighting, otherwise we're gonna kill everybody at your house and your whole family.
I don't know. If
And
we were to
then-
go
and
back,
so
if we were to
then
go back in
home.
time, if we were to go back in time and find some, some people from the Iroquois Nation, right, fighting against the United States government, I don't know if and like show them what they have now. Would you say that they would find the United States government legitimate, or that they took that shit by violence and then they captured and stole that land?
Well, that's a different use of the word legitimate than I'm using.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm saying, like, I would still accept your definition. We would differ on what
Okay.
on the
Like,
usage
I
of
guess,
legitimacy
like,
would be.
it's I'm kind of doing almost like a Game of Thrones, like power does not come from laws and speeches, it comes from armies. And so like that's kind of I'm doing sort of a Game of Thrones speech.
Doobie
there, I
left.
guess,
You
a
had to
little
do
bit.
it for him,
Thank you. But that's kind of what I'm getting. Like, there's been plenty of illegitimate power throughout the world, and it's the unfortunate reality is that's what whoever's got that power is now kind of the state. Because whether we like it or not, in Mexico, the cartel's kind of the state now. Here in the United States, we've got remote piloted drones paid by tax dollars and an entire war machine that we have protecting us. So it's a whole different thing. So
I would say in the United States, actually corporations are the power. And it's not even really like a government. I feel like we are at this point of like full crony capitalism. And I think and it's actually depicted in our movies. I was just talking to one of my really intelligent friends earlier today, and I was specifically mentioning that my favorite genre of movie is always dystopian stuff, right? Like, I love it. I've watched them since I was a kid. Those are my favorite movies almost every time. And if you notice, almost all of our dystopian films now, they're no longer about the government. They're always about corporation. Like I'm watching some show right now called Severance. That one's about a corporation. You look at there was that movie thanks for asking, I want to say, or something like that. It's one of the whatever. It was on Netflix with Lakeith Stanfield. That thing is about corporation. Resident Evil is about corporation. Thank you, Andy. Like almost all movies now are about corporations, because corporations really are what are running our government. Like the fact that Walmart has the lock it does on our government, the fact that the reason why they can get away with like getting all these subsidies from the government and then not having to pay any taxes, like any federal taxes and whatnot. And that, like, that's the blueprint. McDonald's is doing the exact same thing. The tobacco industry is like literally lobbying our government, and like they have all this say and all this power. Like, you see it everywhere. It's like that's the world that we're living in nowadays. So I would say, yeah, power is really whatever anyone you can get everyone else to submit to. And in this case, like the thing that we've gotten everyone to submit to is like this idea of a government, which is really just corporate.
Fanatic, I think you would actually really enjoy this. He's a critical theorist of sociology. C. Wright Mills, 1956, The Power Elite. You should definitely read it.
Well, maybe one day.
It's 1956. He's talking about like the government, the state, and corporations and the military industrial complex post World War II, and the ways in which the elites throughout our history have changed from the intelligentsia that weren't really like corporate, and the way the corporations kind of like captured power, and the way that they kind of like the new elite in terms of education and schools and nepotism and the way that they control government and work against each other. He's a bit of a commie for too much for my sake, but I think you'll actually really like it, and it'll help you argue that point better.
If I may, just two things real quick. I wanted to touch on Fanatic. You are right. There's been a weird shift in our fiction. And I remember thinking, like, it's strange. Like, in 1989, the Joker was like, hey, look what happens when we drop him into a vat of chemicals. And then the Joker in 2019 is, hey, look what happens when we drop him into society. It's like, oh, fuck, okay. That's a bit of a different
the fuck is he talking
and also,
about?
To Fabian, what you were talking about a little bit earlier, we have had a weird shift in like what is an elite and what's the jobs of the elite. Like, and one thing that I was talking about just last night on my podcast is look at journalism. Journalism back just a generation ago used to be a blue collar profession. Used to be, Gumshoe, just the guy with the press hat, and he's like, hey, now the press has a right to know. And now journalism is the job of the elites. It's the job of the super ultra mega rich, and it's a vanity project of I am in the press. Like Anderson Cooper, his real name is Vanderbilt. His mother was a Vanderbilt.
Yeah, he's a Vanderbilt.
Nobody really talks about that. So he's from one of the most wealthy families in human history, and he's also a known CIA asset for about 5 years. So wink, wink. So totally former. So so it's fascinating that now these super ultra mega elites are now what make up our journalism when it used to be a very blue-collar job.
So anarcho-capitalists, but specifically Michael Malice, has a term that I think is really helpful here, which is known as the cathedral, right? And the cathedral is an understanding that the state, the media, the kind of deep state, if you will, right? Like the executive branch of like unelected officials, as well as the intelligentsia and academia and like the experts, they kind of all work in this weird way that they kind of pat each other on the back. Sometimes they fight each other, right? When their values don't necessarily align, but mostly they work for each other. And a great example of this, while bringing up journalism, right, is that in the 20s and in the 30s, right, there was this idea that the fourth branch of government was like, the journalists, right? And that they act as an additional check and balance against the state by reporting corruption and things like that. And they tried really hard until fucking the National Review guy, I can't think of it, William F. Buckley, and the Buckley-Vidal debates and things like that. They tried to be really objective. But now, Edward Snowden reports all of the horrible shit our government is doing, reports that they're spying on us, proves that John Brennan is lying to Congress, and now the guy works for fucking CNN, right? Like, and they're working with the intelligence community, right? Like the major media journalism, including Fox News. I want to fucking add to all the right wingers out there that go, not my Tucker Carlson. He gets a little bit of a slip to talk shit from time to time, but let's be honest, he's got a fucking short leash on from what he can and can't talk about. All right. Even Fox News, your beloved right wing, they all fucking work with the state and pat each other on the fucking backs. And so, yeah, corporations have taken over much more power. I always say we live in an oligopoly masquerading as a republic, masquerading as a democracy. People think we live in a democracy. We don't. It's a constitutional republic. But the fact of the matter is that those with a lot of money and power fucking decide what we can and can't do for the most part. And you get to argue about wedge issues like fucking marijuana legislation.
So,
which you should vote for, by the way.
So can we agree? Listening to all you guys have had to say.
My bad. Curtis Yarvin invented it. Michael Malice popularized it in a lot of ways to my community. I apologize. Chat fucked me up. It's Curtis Yarvin or Mencius Mulbug.
Okay. All right. So listening to all you have to say, which appeals to me, on the socialist left here. Can we agree that the power of corporations, their influence is is it inherently coercive, right? Like And like trying to get back to the topic at hand, right? Like I was trying to make the distinction between an individual arriving at the conclusion that hey, smoking cigarettes is something I want to do, right?
Mhm.
Um, and like, and that's saying that's fine. But on the other end, that a corporation pushing it onto them, would be predatory. Um, do you think that there is an inherent coercive power since corporations are so well resourced and connected to all those branches of our society and
Well, I
power?
kind of want to. Oh yeah, I kind of want to start with this. First, I want to say that my view of the United States democracy or constitutional republic, which is just another way of saying representative democracy,
No, it's not.
is very different from the rest of the panel here. I guess like I'm not as pessimistic, and I don't think like corporations have complete control over government as well as our everyday lives. And then like to answer then your question, Prime, is it like inherently coercive? Uh, I don't want to like answer in the terms of coercion because I think that's already a losing argument. But what I will say is there is a conflict of interest when it comes to corporations in society because they have a product or a commodity or a service that they want to sell and they want to have the regulations of government and society that in order to benefit those sales because their primary goal is to make a profit and to also to survive the market. So then it is within their benefit, regardless if it's coercive or not, or like is it evil or wrongdoing. It is just to their interest to then to then influence the government in order to make a favorable environment for their survival or for their gain or whatnot. And this at times could come into conflict with the public benefit. So kind of like going
Yeah,
back to
obviously.
the original topic when it comes to when it comes to big tobacco or really a lot of industries, we could even argue like the oil industry also has an incentive against the public for their own profit margins and whatnot. They will do that stuff in order to in order to get more money and whatnot.
It's called
So
regulatory
there's
capture. That's the term.
yeah, there's a power dynamic, there's a conflict of interest, there's an incentive structure that kind of leads them towards those actions. So then what then is we kind of hope that the government does is because well, companies, they don't vote, it's people that vote, and there's more people than there are number of companies who could whatnot. Yeah, there's also the influence of money, so there's a lot of factors to be at play. So then the hope is that you kind of have Congress to regulate that, and then you also have other organizations that are I guess like less bound by the laws of profit driven decisions that are then going to help us get the information in order to regulate and whatnot. And so like there's a whole organization, there's this whole network that kind of like bind society. But I think at the end of the day, what a lot of people miss when it comes to the talk of, oh, corporations are evil, is that corporations are also necessary in order for our society or current society really to function, because they're the ones that give us our services, commodities, and we often don't think about how they do offer us a lot of good things, a lot of necessary things in order for us to live, and things like that. And so then, like when it comes to corporations or evil kind of talk, we kind of always pinpoint as like big tobacco or big oil as like the image of all corporations. But yeah, it's a
So
necessity to life.
okay, so I think you said some viable things there, but um, I well, okay, look, I think that corporations as they stand are like sociopathic. That they're designed to be that way. That's their incentive structure. It's sociopathic, right? But it tends to be like okay that they operate this way for the most part. For most corporations, which I think is what you're trying to get at, is that like they just they're just these entities, and they're like going for profit, and but that tends to line up because hey, it's IKEA, and I want IKEA's furniture because I want cheap shit that'll last me until I move out of my apartment or the fuck, right?
Yeah, just
So like,
don't be obese to break it.
don't be obese. Don't be obese. Apparently.
Prime
but like,
Cayes showing his fat phobia. Let's go.
Okay. All right.
Oh, y'all. Oh, don't worry about none of that. There, as the resident fat guy on the panel, I will say there will never be fat solidarity. It's never going to happen because, like, even if like if I see a guy that's like 40 pounds,
Fuck, I
lighter
memed
than me
KOE
in a
into
Walmart,
talking.
He'd be like, "Look at this fat motherfucker over here." It's like, so yeah, there's no fat solidarity. Don't worry about it, folks. It'll never happen.
That's interesting. So go back to it. Yeah. So like most of the times, like their search for profit just kind of aligns with us, and it's like not that big of a deal, right? They want to sell more products, make more money, maybe dodge some taxes, which is a problem, but still, it tends to work out. But for corporations such as big tobacco, right, when you're selling dangerous products, right, or a big gun, or all that stuff, right, like when they're selling products that are dangerous to the community, I think I can differentiate them. I mean, maybe other people would draw the line in other places because they think maybe certain products are dangerous that I don't consider dangerous. So I guess it's up to them. But like those sociopathic behaviors line up with like hurting the public more, encouraging the public to self-harm in a way they may not have otherwise, which I think is the problem. Right? I'm okay with someone deciding that they want to take their own life. I mean, I don't want them to, but I'm okay with them deciding to do so. But I'm not okay with someone trying to convince them to take their own life. Right? That's my problem. And so corporations are that person in the room, right? But magnified because of their power, their resources, their connection, right? And the way they can infiltrate all parts of our life. So that's my issue there. I think, well, okay, one last thing about corporations, not big tobacco, so leaving that aside, but just generally in terms of corporation, I think maybe if we change their incentive structure, that like in terms of their stock, having to get a return on investment for their stockholders, right? That being their top priority for publicly, traded companies. Then if that was not the case, then I think they were much better. I think they were much better in the past before when that wasn't the case. When they have to focus on these short-term gains, and even they're still pushing to advance their profits. The fact that they could do so in a long-term horizon, not worried about like the next quarter and the next quarter, right? That they can make decisions like even for their customers. That we'll lose money in the short term, but this will be better for our customers. Let's just do that, right? In the long term, we'll build customer loyalty. So like that's the last thing I'll say there.
That's state intervention that causes them to have short-term goals like that, right? Like it's to the benefit of a company to succeed in the long term. The problem is that you have a fractional reserve banking system, and you have a state that works in league with this system and quantitative easing and all these other wonderful things that intentionally tries to inflate the currency, right? If you had a currency that was far more stable with much less inflation and even possibly deflation, what you would find is that the appropriate forms of investment would be long-term investments. But the problem is that these corporations work off of short-term gains because of the way that we have an inflationary system of our currency and not deflation.
So I thought you were going in a different direction, and that like corporations have a fiduciary responsibility.
They do as well.
To-
They have a fiduciary responsibility. I mean,
Well, also,
what
in the
about
that would be
Articles
the
of
state.
Incorporation, every corporation, when they're formed, they have to have in the Articles of Incorporation that they will follow all state, local, and federal laws, and so that they have to follow all laws of the land if they're going to be a corporation. So that's just in any of their bylaws. So it's one of those that if you don't like corporations, well, I mean, there's laws for that. Vote for the right people, folks. Get out there and vote.
Corporations.
We got
are here to
midterms coming up.
stay.
Be sure to get out and vote.
I don't think there's anybody you can vote for that's just gonna vote to get rid of corporations. That's just not gonna happen. Like they're like kind of the bedrock.
probably
Well,
not, but
that's not
when you
feasible
look-
either.
What,
Like I said
you want.
before,
Well,
like
let Fanatic finish.
okay,
Fanatic.
Yeah, so I would say, and also I don't know that corporations have to be problematic. I think it's just that once the corporations start like getting incredibly powerful and doing evil things like Walmart, Amazon, not paying people minimum like living wages and things like that, bringing in record profits is where we run into a problem. When they're not giving you benefits and giving you minimum wage and subsidizing the government. I mean getting subsidized by the government for giving you below a living wage, but then like you know, they're getting paid by the government to give you like below minimum wage and then not actually giving you any benefits despite the fact that they're being subsidized. I think that's where we start running into problems. I don't think corporations as a whole are a problem. They employ the most Americans. We just need better laws to make sure that they're not screwing us.
Well, I think the laws are the problem in and of itself. I'm glad that both of you brought up Walmart, right? Because what we find is that the state, just like Fanatic said, they give all these tax incentives for Walmarts to move into places and give them an unfair advantage because of the supposed jobs that it will create. And then we have all of these welfare systems that Walmart specifically targets and uses and teaches their employees to use so that they don't have to pay them a living wage. And whereas mom and pop companies, for whatever reason, they're not the sociopathic companies as Prime Cayes is describing, even though they're also corporations, most of them. So, I mean, like the term here is doing a lot of legwork, but right. Like what they'll do is, they'll pay people $15, $20 an hour to do a job that Walmart will pay them $9 an hour to do. And because they're paying them $9 an hour, and then they'll teach them and they'll go, hey, here's how you get food stamps. Here's how you get temporary assistance for needy families. Here's how you utilize these government programs that are used with taxation. And then what do is they price the mom and pop stores out. And then what you have is, even though the price demand, even the supply demand equation of labor is essentially the same, right? Like Walmart's not actually like, yes, technically Walmart is paying its employees less, but if they're utilizing government benefits and they don't feel any shame in doing so, then they're actually getting roughly the same amount of money if they would have done the same job elsewhere. But the difference is that money's coming from the taxpayer. And that's money's coming out of the taxpayer because they tax incentivize them to come in, so Walmart can have lower wages, but also because of all of these welfare programs. The problem here is that the state is subsidizing Walmart both with social welfare as well as with tax incentives that should be fucking illegal. The idea that you can have a stadium or a Walmart and it can get a $200,000 3-year tax break to come to your small podunk town and then force all these small businesses out is fucking insane to me. Right. But again and again, what you find is that it's not the market that is causing the problem. It's the large corporations that are taking advantage of the fact that the state has the ability to set all of the rules on taxation and has the ability to regulate these things. And small businesses can't keep up with those regulations, or they're not diversified enough to be able to have those regulations, or they're competing with these large companies. I mean, for Christ's sake, AT&T, right? They basically stopped cell phone technology by like 10 fucking years by buying up all fucking kinds of IP patents and things like that. Like the world would have had cell phones a minimum of 5 years earlier if AT&T didn't have like IP protections from the state, and they weren't able to just buy up patents and fucking then no one was allowed to legally make those products.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing is like, it sucks, but it's also like we get so many benefits from it. It's really hard to just like easily just say, oh, they suck, right? I mean, think of like Amazon. Like my friend was mentioning earlier today. Like back in the day, if you wanted to order something from Amazon, if you wanted to do online shopping, it was terrible. It took it forever to get to you. It just wasn't good. Nowadays, you order something and it's like here, like the same day sometimes, or at the very least the next day.
I got this mic.
Yeah, so you get, huh?
That's where I got this mic. Amazon.
Oh, there you go. Of course, mine too. As well as my ring light. As well as the webcams that I'm using. As well as the monitor that I'm using. As well, no, not my mouse, but my keyboard for sure. And then all the Plan B that I've like gotten. I had a monthly subscription to Amazon. So it's like.
Also, I ain't bought shit from Amazon. I know I'm the weird one.
That's
though.
Crazy. Yeah, you are a weird one. Like, because it's like part of the fabric of this country. Like, it's like the people that decide, like, I'm not shopping at Walmart. It's like, nigga, like, you can die on that hill if you want to, but you and I both know that you are inconveniencing the freak out of yourself. Like,
it is an inconvenience, but I'm like, yeah, fuck that. I don't want to do that.
Boys and Invincible was my breaking point.
I try and support people's like jobs around here. I'll just go out to a store and buy the shit.
support. I'm the same as you, Scott, in that like I avoid a Walmart and Amazon when I can, because you know I wanna. Also, I'm out throwing on Twitch, so ignore that part. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like I'm using their
Nebraska, like-
services for sure, but
Out
I'm
here
not
in
ordering.
Nebraska, like you go into Walmart, it's like damn near a date night. It's like, oh, darling, I'm taking you to the fancy Walmart. Nice, like yeah. So like the idea that you don't go to Walmart, that's just you can't do that around here.
Sounds like you shouldn't be in Nebraska, but I think the thing is at the same time though, like these employers, they provide so much, they employ more so than like anything else, right? So then it's like niggas are dependent. It's just, again, we just need to make sure that it's balanced. Like we need to like create rules that like don't allow them to continue to rape the rest of society by like paying niggas like terrible wages and all the nonsense that they're doing. That's just the next step. But then that's gonna take literally an act of Congress, right?
I don't
They're not
understand.
gonna do that.
I don't understand the logic that so many people have, and I'm supposedly insane for being the anarchist here, right? But it's like I look at what people say all the time. It's like this hasn't worked out, and the state has used its power to fuck us over with corporations. If only we vote the right people in and we make the right rules. It's like, dude, the people that you voted in and the rules were what caused the fucking problem in the first place. Like, just get rid of these things. Like, stop trying to get the right rules
easier
in.
said than done. Easier said than done. Just to overturn the entire system.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like, I'm all for incrementalism and I'm all for fighting this uphill battle, but it's just like I hear you guys be like, look at the way that the state has punished us over and over again, along with the help of corporations. What we need to do is we need to make sure the right rules are put in place this time.
I say,
That's because no, but that's because of a selective hearing. Because like we also at the same time we're talking about, well, let's look at the way the state has benefited us. Let's look at the fact that like when Brown versus Board of Education happened, like those white states were sitting there. I'm sorry, those red states were still making those statements. We're not about to listen. We're not budging for you niggas. And so, actually, they were blue states at the time. We're not budging for you niggas, right? So then, like, at the end of the day, the only way we could actually get these niggas to do what we wanted them to do was when the state stepped in and said, oh, no. Y'all niggas about to do it. And y'all about to do it right now.
Real quick. Was Jim Crow, were they called Jim Crow free associations by private corporations, or were they called Jim Crow laws?
So they were definitely called Jim Crow laws, and I think my point still stands. Yeah, and I think my point still stands that like in that situation, that was a place where the state had to step in and force these niggas to do that. The state had to step in and force these niggas to say, hey, guess what? You can't ban interracial marriage. The state had to step in and say, separate but equal is not actually equal. Y'all niggas gonna do better.
Dog.
The state stepped in for us, God knows how many different times. So where you can say, oh man, the state is horrible.
You're proving me
we can
right.
say,
You're
okay,
proving
sure.
me right, which is that the state had to step in to stop state action. Like you're proving me right that the problem is the state action in the first place, and you're like more state action to overdo the other state action instead of just getting rid of that state action, which was the problem.
No, that there's always
again, like how would you get rid of the state in the first place? So then, like it goes down to our option is in order for in order to fight against the entity that has the legitimate use of violence, then we also have to use the entity that has the legitimate use of violence, like against itself, for itself, blah blah blah. Like that's how really like it's supposed to work. And then if I really wanted to, you know, there are plenty of states out there that are just not called the United States that do really well when it comes to like the complaints that I was hearing when it comes to like healthcare benefits and whatnot, like corporations and what government like does in order to compensate the people for them to have like a good life. Scandinavia are apparently like social democracy and things like that. And I was kind of thinking earlier, Fabian, when you were talking about that stuff, maybe I was getting a little hang of what Fanatic was talking about, how like you kind of just like say things in like a bad way. But then like the thought occurred to me that like I wouldn't want companies to provide like these kinds of benefits to people, such as healthcare, dental, vision, or whatnot. I wouldn't want them to do that because I don't trust them.
Why do you trust the government?
I would much rather trust the government and have like some sort of a public option or Medicare for all that is able to do that, because like I
I got a
What's up?
challenge
I mean,
for
like
you.
I'm not finished yet. I'm not
Oh,
finished
shut
yet.
the fuck up. You're
But
so
then
nice
like
about it. I'll stop.
like like I don't think companies would want to do this in the first place. Because like how that happened, if my history serves me well, is that the government gave them that responsibility because the government didn't want to do that. Because they thought that like, okay, this is how we're going to get people to go to work and things like that. But then like, what ends up happening, I think, is automation is going to come kicking in. People are really going to be out of jobs and whatnot, and you're just going to have like a bunch of people who don't have this necessary service. That like I think the government really ought to come back and take over that responsibility again, that other countries have done so and done it properly, and it's a better system than what we have right now. And so then companies would be like, fuck it, yeah, and like our focus should be for our stockholders, for profits. Like when it comes to human resources, like, yeah, we don't want to do that. So if they don't want to do that, why should they care? Like it then kind of becomes obvious why they become so relaxed about it. It's just another cost to them that they don't want to spend if otherwise.
JHL, I'm gonna be real quick. I could go into a whole argument about why I think you're wrong on so many levels on this, but instead, I'll just like a human to human. All I want you to do is next time you have some free time, go to a VA hospital and tell me your opinion hasn't changed some. That's it. Just go to a VA hospital.
A Veteran Affairs hospital.
Yep. Whichever one's closest to you. Just go to a VA hospital.
Wait, why would that? Why would that be effective? Because I've been to VA hospital. One of the females that I was talking to, she's worked there for God knows how long. What is that supposed to do to someone's opinion?
Fanatic, no offense, I don't think you're very open-minded. JHL seems to be fairly open-minded. Just go to a VA hospital. You're stubborn. We both are. But just go. Just experience what it's like in a VA hospital.
What's the point?
I
get it. So for the audience and everybody else who's
hospitals.
not going to be there, I'm asking you, can you just go ahead and vocalize what the point you're trying to make, what you've learned?
Well, he
from
has
the
an
VA
implicit
hospital?
trust, right, of state-run healthcare. He has an implicit trust of that over corporations.
Oh,
being
excuse
involved.
me.
So just go.
So like, I wouldn't trust the state to run healthcare, but I would trust the state to provide the costs for the healthcare. So then, like, really, what I would want the state to do is kind of become the placeholder of health insurance.
So
then we would still have private healthcare. We would still have private-run hospitals.
That's a
such.
far more disastrous thing than I thought you were even suggesting. Fair enough, dude. Do you good luck with that. You want to talk about rising healthcare costs? The government that has the power to tax and has no profit incentive is gonna just keep fucking taxing while other private companies
until the
realize
government comes
that
in with price controls, in which other governments.
Fuck! Now we're arguing for price controls. Dog, do you? I hope you have your nice
Fabian,
little socialized
I'm so
state.
sorry, Fabian. I'm talking about like social democracy.
Oh fuck, dude! You're
how,
gonna be in a
there's
Holodomor
many
before you know
factors
it.
going on. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, again, I'm barking up the wrong tree. But that's typically how that works. There's for every problem there's a solution, and like we don't have to just like take out everything and throw it out as like garbage. We could fix it. We could tweak it here and there.
No, dog. You're gonna end up having people starve to death if you get in power.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of me getting in power, but it's what's happening right now, and it's been working.
Well, just a box of fluffy doves.
Yeah, disagree. But that's okay. I guess
Prime, you disagree that like the system isn't working in other countries?
No. I'm that the system isn't working in the countries.
That the system is working in other countries.
Is working. No. I'm a fucking
that's what I'm describing.
No. Yeah, I wasn't disagreeing with you. I was disagreeing with
okay.
Scott here.
Our friend here.
Yeah. He's a friend.
Well, we heard it here.
My friend.
We heard it here, folks. These guys want to institute policies that'll cause people to smoke more cigarettes and then have the government run the healthcare so that you can wait in line for a month or two before you can even find out whether or not you have cancer. And somehow that will make the cancer go down.
Isn't that a myth?
Oh my.
But all right, never mind. We're not gonna have time to like dig into that. But I would love to at some point. Okay, so everyone, thanks for being here. We are going
Well, the waiting
continue on with our
lists are
open
just a
welcome
myth,
panel, so we'll have
guys.
more content right after this, so stick around. More content coming your way as we always do. If you've been enjoying this content so far, hit that follow button, and make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this 6 nights a week, and we're always giving you more, right? So expect for social and chat. For our social media, we got Twitter where we tweet things. We got Discord. We're going to do everything, including our blog compound, which will be happening there. TikTok is where you find amazing videos from the channel, and YouTube's where you can find the VOD. So if you want to see anything that you might have missed, check out our YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way, and be a huge help. Okay. I'm going to give an outro to these individuals, but stick around. We still have more content. The content does not end. Stick around, and we'll go from there. All right, we'll start with our friend Jade Chow. And Jade Chow, before we go anywhere else, like people have been asking, and I meant to ask at the very beginning, but I forgot. What's with the mask?
Oh, the mask. I was gonna mention. So today's been quite busy, and I didn't have time to shower, and I was kind of self-conscious of getting on camera and kind of like my face being a bit not presentable. So I put on the mask. Yeah, that's the real reason. Not fun.
Okay, I'm a little
There's
confused.
nothing entertaining about it.
But
Well,
like
the mask covers. Okay, all right. Hot take. Okay, when it comes to looking at people with masks, it's so much better because the mask covers up half the face, and like a lot of people out there are ugly as fuck. Okay, but with the mask on, it's so much more bearable to look at them.
well, okay.
This is true. This is true.
Sure. I mean, if you're looking at good people, sure. But like, I don't see how. Like, yes, you didn't take a shower, but like, unless you have like flecks of food stuck to your face or something, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, Prime, how the fuck would you know, huh? I've had this mask on this entire time. You don't know, do you?
I assume that you were a regular functioning individual, so that was my fault.
That's right. I would be, but then I got a message all of a sudden this afternoon that I to be on this event, and I thought about it. I was like, okay, I'll put it on my schedule. Now I'll share a part of the blame in that I wasn't very good at balancing my time today for me too. I would have much rather have taken a shower beforehand, but I just didn't have the time.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. All right. We advocate for people to do whatever they want with their own bodies, right? And we appreciate you, Jade Chow. Thank you, seriously, Jade Chow, for coming through. Everyone, check out Jade Chow live, which is where you'll find him. Tearing it up. He's honestly, Jade Chow is one of the first people like I met. Like our first other streamers that I met here on this platform. And he's been a great guy, and I've always been thankful to have him around. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, likewise for me too. I would also want people to check out my YouTube channel, Jay Chow, just Jay Chow. That's where I'm uploading videos on political science. That's what I studied in college. It's kind of been memed on here. Thank you, Fabian Liberty. But it's always nice to hear some philosophy and poli-sci talk from the rest of the panel. It makes me feel at home, I guess.
All right, well, I'm glad we could provide you with that. All right, well, next we go to our friend Kate. Oh no, actually no, we can't. Not that's. I can't let people follow you again. So we'll go to our friend Scott, Fabulous Scott. Thank you for coming here and being as cantankerous as you always are.
I resent that accusation, sir.
I don't think you do. But thank you, seriously, for coming through, man. You've been absolutely fantastic. So shout out to you. Anuritas, thank you for the 200 bits. And to the Preston, thank you for resubbing for Prime Gaming. We're about to get a hype train, guys. If you can support us that way, subs to channel, get bits, give subs. That'd be awfully useful. Let's get that hype train started. Please go ahead, Fabian.
Yeah,
Scott.
My name is Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're a duo anarcho-capitalist stream. Do philosophy. We do interviews. We do news reactions, debates, all the gambit. What we don't do is play a ton of video games, which is weird on Twitch, but you should come check us out, Fabian Liberty everywhere. We've got a decent backlog of interviews, and we should be doing some more in the future, talking to LP members. We talked to Tulip R. Richie before he sued the NHS, and right before he sued the NHS and, had that whole retweet thing with J.K. Rowling and stuff. It's a pretty good one. Talked to Buck Angel. We've talked to people from Post Millennial. We've been doing a lot of those, a lot of libertarian stuff too. So definitely come check us out. Like I said, Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. On Twitter, if you search Fabian Liberty, it's Liberty_Fabian, but you'll find it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. Moving forward, we have my man, Mr. Fanatic, and Fanatic person. Absolutely always welcome here on this community, right? And happy to get him around, especially when we can get him fired up. Those are the best moments, right? In fact, I think I prefer it when he's like pissed at me, because I think you provide the very best content when you can't stand the way it's coming out of my mouth. So Fanatic, thanks for coming through. And you're muted. The best
I'm
words
glad
from
to
a
agree
man.
with you 100%, because I think, when I'm really mad at you is when I get to be honest. And I think people really like when I'm exposing you for, the bad takes that you have. And I think that's, just a cool thing to do. You're a leftist, Prime, and it's just an awful place to be in, especially in this great country where we've seen all of these amazing things that have happened through capitalism. I don't know, it's wild. Anyway, twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatic, music under the name Fanatic, Fanatiq. I have the best ear on Twitch. I can replicate pretty much any song with the best accuracy of any person that has ever been on Twitch. I do music. That's what my real passion is. Politics comes second. You have any questions regarding anything, all things Christianity? I think I am a biblical fundamentalist who actually actively reads his Bible. So if you have actual conversations with actual Christians, or if you want actual conversations with actual Christians that are actually
Dog, is he memeing right now?
and aren't just listening to some random,
or does he actually believe this
going
shit?
off of whatever they think to be correct, but actually listen to the Bible, I'm that guy.
Thank you so much. Oh boy, we need to have a talk. Oh man, guys, we have less than a minute left. See if we can get this hype train started. It'd be a huge help to the community. We just need one person to start up. So channel get.
I think he actually believes it. He's a Christian.
Let's
That's
go.
insane.
To my man, KOE Nation.
Thou shalt not steal.
I haven't seen him here in quite a while, and it's been a hole in my heart, right? My soul has not been the same. So thank you, my man KOE, for stopping by. You added a lot, like you always do, right?
You're a wizard,
so
Harry.
Here. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for bringing me on this evening to this amazing show here at the Prime Cayes panel. And we still got hype coming, folks, and be a part of this story. Give back to this community, this amazing show. Prime, thank you for having me on this evening, and everyone within the sound of my voice. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. I hope every last one of you makes it right back here. Happy, healthy, much the wiser. You can find me, Phil KOE, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, the lord of the Scottish Highlands, and one damn handsome man, if I do say so myself. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube. I just dropped the link in the chats, folks. KOE Nation on YouTube. Hell, there it is. One more time just for you. I'm never above shameless self-promotion, all you beautiful people. Thank you. God bless. Raise a glass to yourselves, folks. Your glass, your cup, your tankard, your chalice, your stein, your flask, your vessel of any kind, and just raise it to yourself. God bless every last one of you. Thank you for being here in this journey we call life. Be a part of this story. Prime Cayes. Follow
no,
here
the mute,
Twitch.
the cringe
Subscribe
shall
on
stay.
YouTube, folks. Of course, right after KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitch. But folks, thank you. God bless. Catch you on the flip side.
Oh my God, you're so perfect. Like I need KOE, right, to come with me on dates. Right? Like I need this man.
Prime is the man you need to understand. This is the man that can, and he's got the plan. You need to I just hype you up on dates. Like that. Oh God, that'd be great.
Yeah, God, you're amazing. I love KOE so much, right? Like, and I mean, like KOE and I don't agree on lots of things, but like, this is a friendship though, right? That goes beyond like politics. He's a fantastic individual. Thank you so much, buddy. All right, we are going to continue on for Open Walk On panel right after this. If anyone here wants to join us, well, we'd love to have you. That's okay. But if not, It's fine. Thank you for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion of my community. I know they appreciate you as much as I do. Have a great one. Thank you. Bye.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.